for 2025 budget. Appreciate you guys being here. Turn over to Mark and staff right away.
Okay, thanks, Mr. Mayor. Julie and I will try to just give a little overview. You know, I assume everybody read the budget message, which I think covers a lot of the basic things. I'm just going to highlight some of the larger level things. There's certainly a lot of detail in the document itself, and the departments are here to talk about that detail as well as how their budgets fit in with the city strategic plan. The budget for 2025, the general fund budget, and really going to be talked about mostly here, is a little misleading because of the effort that the finance and, ironically, the police department, who's first up to bat, moving the ambulance service out of the general fund to isolate those costs for transparency with respect to the other municipalities who have questions about the increase in the per capita fee. So while it looks like it technically says a 5.96% increase, when you add the public safety back in, that changes it a little bit. So the overall tax levy, which I think is something that the council's been very sensitive to, is proposed at $48.9 million, which is an increase of 2.83%. I know there's a lot of concern because of the recent revaluation, and I'm going to let the finance director talk about that a little bit because she has sent some information out to you regarding that impact. The intergovernmental revenue is going to increase by nearly $500,000 over the 2024 budget. That is, while it's not as significant as last year's increase, it still represents the second largest increase we've had in 30 years because last year was the largest increase in 30 years. In fact, last year was the first increase in 30 years. So that's why it's easy to say it's the second largest. Intergovernmental revenue, while it's welcomed, also comes with certain challenges and certain requirements, specifically the maintenance of effort for police and fire, which we're required to do under the new shared revenue allocation. So obviously public safety is a big part of that, and there was the fire department, as you'll hear in a few moments, asked for a ambulance unit, an 8-person ambulance unit to provide a 4th ambulance unit in the city. As you see, that's a significant increase. I believe the amount in the budget itself, excuse me a second, I want to make sure I've got the right numbers. There's an increase of $725,000 in there to reflect that. That does not include capital costs because that's going to be separate in the capital improvement plan. So you're going to see that. There's also another increase that the council did not direct me to do. The council directed me to do the ambulance increase. There's been some discussion about addressing homeless issues with a behavioral health officer, essentially a social worker, working with that behavioral health officer. Those are both in the budget. Those were enhancements. So in the interest of just transparency, the other enhancements that were requested by departments, we provided to you for informational purposes only. Those were not recommended by me. The departments are certainly happy. I'm sure they're happy to answer questions, but I felt it was appropriate, given the fact that 2 major enhancements made it through, that you should see what things were in there. I think the departments were pretty responsible in not over asking for things, and so we've got that in there. As I said, the primary revenues are property tax and shared revenue or intergovernmental revenues. We talked about that a little bit, but it's important to point out that property taxes and intergovernmental revenues count for 85% of the general fund revenue. So we can talk about raising additional revenues, but in reality, they're not very substantial in the scheme of things. So we do have an increase in interest earnings because of the interest rates being what they are, but other than that, the other revenues are pretty static. So I think you're going to see that as you look at some of the detail there. I talked about the strategic plan, and certainly public safety is a big emphasis in this year's budget. With respect to property taxes, Julie, I know you gave the council a memo. Do you want to talk about that a little bit and just give your perspective on what that is, and then I'll talk about fund balance.
So I did send out the email last week just to try to be consistent with what information I was providing to everyone. I know there's been a lot of talk about the revaluation and how that is impacting especially residential. So fictitious, I didn't want to really these numbers to go public because it's completely, it's just an example. We can't produce these results. It's just an example. But I put commercial at exactly 100% to equalize value and residential at exactly 100% to equalize value. And then I compared that to how our assessed values came out this year. For those properties, because on average, I think the assessor has been telling everyone that the average increase was about 60-70%, and community development can tell me if I was wrong, but on average there was that increase. If it was over that increase, those are the properties that saw the greater increase in the taxes. If it was under that percentage, they saw the probably not an increase, maybe even a decrease. However, that was more residential. Once you brought in the commercial, that average got more to that 50%. So that's why you're seeing residential, and the majority of residential are seeing an increase. There was so much discussion about how the revaluation came in and that commercial was not at 100%. That is why I created this fictitious example. In this example, you'll see that residential is still increasing, and that is just the economy. This is not, in my opinion, a one-year swing. This is maybe very, very, very slightly exaggerated this 1 year, but in general, the majority of the swing is due to the economy, is due to the markets, is due to residential properties selling at a much higher value and seeing that huge increase percentage-wise compared to commercial properties. So this example that I emailed out was basically just to show, even if both commercial and residential was at 100%, you're still seeing a big increase of residential properties because of this shift. And this shift is not unique to Oshkosh. I saw the same exact shift in my previous municipality. I think they're seeing it statewide and across the nation. But that is why I sent this information out, just to kind of show that even if it's at 100% both ways, you're still going to see this shift towards residential, unfortunately, just based off of the market. But I also wanted to kind of see if anyone had questions.
So saying it maybe same but different, residential is far outpacing commercial property values. I mean, the growth of residential property values are far outpacing commercial, and that's a fact.
Yes.
So yeah, to your point, no matter what, residential was going to far outpace. In this case, it just outpaced it a little bit more than it should have, but in the end, it was going to no matter what.
Right.
Yeah.
And we had shown in the September council meeting when we talked about this, and I also provided it again in the email last week, that diagram where the state says that as long as you're between 90 and 110%, that's the guidelines. So even if you can see how they've never been the same. Commercial and residential have never been the exact same percentage. The last few years, residential has been a lot lower than commercial. The state doesn't care at that point. I'm not going to say that we would like them to be as close to each other as we can. I'm just saying, for what the state says is allowable, as long as you're between 90 and 100%, 10%, you're allowable. So next year, we can have the opposite issue. We could have commercial at 110% and residential at 95%, and state will still be happy with us. It's that constant fluctuation that we hope in the end it equals or averages out.
But the bottom line is, our opinion is that it will not correct itself next year in '26. Like, I think there's some assumption that that's going to happen. That will not happen. the residential is continuing to go up, and the commercial is going up, but just not as fast. Retail stronger than office. That's a reality out there too. So to try to do something to correct it because you think it's a one-year thing, I would strongly disagree with that and caution you against doing something reactive to address the shock value of an increase in the values. We did say earlier in the year that it doesn't necessarily mean your increase is going to go up 70%. Things aren't going up 70% because our property tax rate is dropping significantly. It's going from $12+ down to about $8.45 if I'm, I should have looked at that, but it's going down significantly. But the examples that the finance director provided council are legitimate estimates that we have, and they were fictional. They were meant to illustrate. But will this correct itself next year? I think one of the terms one of the council members, it's whipsawing. No, it's not. It's not going to whipsaw back. It just won't. So I just wanted to make that clear as you're debating and discussing what you ultimately want the tax levy to be next year. Please keep that in mind. One of the options for the council to consider is certainly the use of fund balance and how we do that. And I think that the finance staff did an admirable job of identifying fund balances that can be used. And one in particular is the debt service fund. And we do have a strong fund balance. But one of the things that there's some advantage to going through the exercise we did for the fire department. And this has nothing to do with the fire department, but it has to do with our fund balance policy. As Julie and her staff went through the fund balance analysis and we removed ambulance out, then suddenly our fund balance percentage shot up. Well, of course it did, because ambulance is no longer part of the general fund. So we started to look at that and said, what is that really the right approach to be taking? Because you could have that percentage artificially increase by taking things out of the general fund just for the sake of taking it out. The fact that we chose to take ambulance out was really for a totally different reason. It had nothing to do with fund balance. It had to do with transparency with everything we're doing. But in the process, we artificially increased our percentage. Not only, so I think Julie did this analysis just to demonstrate where we think the real percentage should be. This is not a policy change, but we think that the Long Range Finance Committee should take a look at this. What does that mean? I think let Julie walk through this, and then I just have a suggestion for council as you contemplate this. This isn't to say you can't use fund balance. It's just to say let's be careful about overusing fund balance to our detriment. So, Julie, if you could walk through this analysis, please.
Yeah. So coming to Oshkosh, the first thing that I noticed was you have a ton of funds. But two, there are a lot of funds that are tax levy supported, and I think this is due to expenditure restraint program, most likely, as well as transparency. I mean, there's always different reasons on why you create a separate fund versus keeping it within the general fund, but I'm sure it was a combination of both. At some point, someone wanted extra transparency, or expenditure restraint made it necessary. So these other funds that I have listed, well, Denise helped with the spreadsheet. So Denise listed special revenue supported by general fund. Those funds, the main source of income, I would say, would be tax levy support. If it wasn't for expenditure restraint, if it wasn't for extra transparency, most likely those would be within the general fund. The reason they're not, I don't know. I mean, I know the reason for ambulance, but for each one of them, I'm sure there's a different story. So when it comes to the end of the day, all of those, if they end up in negative fund balance, which some of them are, they are going to rely on the general fund to bail them out. So to me, that's something that we have to make sure we're cognizant of. Central City Fund is an internal service fund. So that was a new goal that was created a couple years ago, where we're Public Works Central Garage and some of the street division, they're doing it as an internal service fund. However, there's been some issues within the accounting software, the ERP software. We're working on them. We're getting it better. However, that first year, I think we undercharged the general fund. So that's why we're carrying such a large negative fund balance. We're working with Public Works. I think Haley and the finance team and the Public Works team have made great strides in fixing those problems within the software. And we've had the conversation during the budget meetings that we got to get it to that negative fund balance is staying the same, so we know we fixed the problem, and then at some point, general fund's going to have to bail out that negative fund balance, because I think that's being caused by undercharging the general fund in previous years for services that the central garage provided to other departments. So when Mark asked the question, like, we move the ambulance out, that inflates our fund balance. Is that realistic, or how do we want to look at this? It got our thought process spinning, and it's like all of these funds truly rely on the general fund and the tax levy to bail them out. So when we're talking about a fund balance policy, what I would like to propose to long-range finance is that we really should be looking at this list as to make for what's our happy fund balance considering this list, because if general fund has this huge fund balance, but everyone else is in the negative and are relying on the general fund to bail us out, we're not really looking at the full picture. Does that make sense?
With that said, though, as the analysis shows, the projected year-end fund balance is almost 18.5 million, and that's still under this modified formula, still 23.76, still very strong. In fact, if you take what's 16% of that new number of 77.8 million, it's still it's still 12,450,000. So we still have, if you want to call it excess over our minimum, it's still $6 million over. So it's not like this is not a doom and gloom. No. We have a very strong fund balance. We've got a great story to tell Moody's Investor Services when we meet with them in the next week or two. But I think we're just taking a more careful approach, and that exercise we did for the fire department did us a favor, because I think it started to get us to realize what other funds do we have to keep an eye on, because the ambulance fund is going to be one of the bigger non-general fund departments or funds that are going to be funded with property tax. If they have a down year, we're going to have a fund balance problem there, and who's going to bail it out? It's going to have to be the general fund. So we want to make sure we're doing that. So, the good news is that we still have excess fund balance of $6 million, even with this modified formula. So I would that's the number I would give you to guide you as you take a look at the use of fund balance. That's really the message I think that Julie and I wanted to share with you this morning.
And I don't want to say that these funds aren't trying to balance. They do. You can see the tax levy support increase, I think, slightly in almost most of these funds, because we do try to present a balanced budget each year. There's a couple unique circumstances that we'll discuss as we go through the different conversations throughout the next 2 days. But the internal service fund was the hugest one, so that's the one that I said we've had that conversation saying we got to make sure we have everything figured out, and then we're going to have to ask general fund to help put us at zero. But for the most part, we are. When we present the budgets, we try to make sure that each of these special revenue funds are going to have a balanced budget each year.
So certainly we're happy to answer any questions, but maybe we could. It's up to the council, Mayor, if you want to have questions now, or do we get into the fire department? We do have Chief Stanley. He couldn't join us this morning in person, so it's up to the mayor how you want to deal with that.
Jake, is he there still?
I think he is.
Oh, there he is. Okay.
There he is.
No, a lot to adjust, but also being respectful of the OFD's time too. We're gonna have plenty of breaks, plenty of time to catch up and ask questions too. So why don't we hop into fire, and then there's gonna be some good opportunities to ruminate on that and then quickly come back. You guys aren't leaving the room at all, so you'll be here all day to continue answering questions that may pop up. So, Mike, if you wanna, or Chief Stanley, you wanna take over? You're up first.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and members of council. That certainly appreciate your time over these next couple of days with such a important process to the city and our community. Appreciate you taking all the time and the commitment to go through these budget presentations. And also appreciate your indulging me by letting me join remotely. I'm joined by my staff there at the table of Assistant Chief Brian Bending, Management Analyst Mary Jo Van Gompel, and Assistant Chief Greg Stelter. I know you do have a long couple of days ahead of you, so I'll try to not only keep you on track, but maybe get you ahead of schedule. I think this will be pretty straightforward to the point, because we've spent a lot of time talking over the past several months about the fire department after we presented the Community Risk Assessment Standards of Cover document to you, and then the pursuant discussions we had about the 4th ambulance and provision of EMS services to our contracted agencies. We've had a lot of opportunity for FaceTime and dialogue. But historically, the fire department has basically had two budgets that had the operating budget and the special revenue budget. We did all of our pay and benefits and fleet maintenance costs and uniform costs and things like that out of the operations budget. And as you would expect of any fire department and pretty much any organization, the vast majority of that operations budget was accounted for by pay and benefits. That's the lion's share of the budget, leaving us a much smaller percentage to put uniforms on the firefighters, put protective equipment on the firefighters, buy janitorial supplies, training, all those things of that nature. And then we had the 235 Special Revenue Fund, where things like FEMA grants, gifts and donations, other types of grants, monies from the state for EMS and hazardous materials services in contracts went into that 235 process. That, as we've talked quite a bit about already this morning, that with a great reliance on the finance department, it's fantastic support by Finance Director Colmus and her team. We've separated out those operating budgets. That it was always just in one big bucket of fire and EMS. And as the city manager discussed, we wanted to have a more accurate accounting for transparency reasons of what does EMS really cost us. As we try to move towards a true costing model for the provision of our services, but also, able to answer the question to our taxpayers, what does EMS cost for our taxpayers? And, as we look at different external revenue sources of, grants and aids, and more, almost as importantly, as we continue to advocate for more funding at the state and federal level for increases in reimbursement from Medicare, Medicaid, supplemental support, things like that, being able to say, no, money isn't going to pay for fire trucks. This is truly going for what it costs us to operate our ambulance service. So very beneficial for moving forward to have those two accounts separated, so that we are truly accounting for what the cost of fire versus EMS is, and we can have a better handle on that. Obviously this is our first foray into that, and we anticipate, over the next coming budgets that we will continue to refine that, fine tune it, so that we really get it down to the granular level of, knowing exactly what those costs are. But also have a number of CIP projects, in the budget as well, in addition to our operating budget, and I'll touch on those momentarily. So the biggest change in our operating budgets is the the addition of the 4th ambulance unit for mid-year 2025. As we've discussed previously, that will necessitate adding 8 firefighter paramedics full-time. In our previous meetings, council directed for that action to be prepared for, and to be reflected in the per capita rates for the contracted municipalities that we provide the townships for, and also in our per capita for the community of Oshkosh. So that's the biggest, obviously, enhancement, and change in our budget. And as City Manager Roloff mentioned, one of the bigger changes in the overall city budget. I'm very appreciative that we received that direction early on so that we could be proactive prior to these workshops in regards to separating those budgets out, notifying the townships of the changes. So certainly appreciate the proactive stance, and appreciate the understanding from council that, in order for us to maintain our exceptional level of service that we provide to all of our patients and customers, that we need to expand our resources to keep pace. That other changes within the operational budget, primarily secondary to inflationary costs. As we all know, going to the grocery store is more expensive. Going to the fire and EMS store is more expensive as well. So increased costs for medical supplies, increased costs for janitorial supplies, office supplies, across, uniforms, equipment across the board more expensive. And so we had to adjust for inflationary costs. In addition to, not only are the costs higher, but as call volume and demands for service continue to increase, not only is the Band-Aid more expensive, you have to buy more of them, because we're using them at a faster rate. So that, in a nutshell, encompasses our operations budget. I'll pivot to that special revenue budget. Said primarily that's a project-based budget. That we get, gifts, grants, aids, reimbursements. That allows us to, track specific projects. If we get a grant to buy, in the past we got a grant to buy fire hose and replace the fire hose. That creates an account tracking process for reporting that we were awarded $50,000. We bought $50,000 worth of fire hose, right? And doesn't cause that fluctuation within the operating budget year to year, because some of those things are very predictable, i.e., our contracts for providing hazardous materials to the state and county, but those, as we know from the SAFER grant application, not always a sure thing. So that, then, like I said, a quick summary of the 235. Pivoting to the capital improvement projects quickly, and then I'll open it up for some more discussion and dialogue. That primarily, capital improvement projects revolve around our aging infrastructure and our aging fleet. That need for facilities improvements over the next several years. Need for rebuilding and remodeling, renovation of fire stations, continuing on our fleet replacement schedule. That we've identified several years prior to this, of replacing ambulances, fire trucks, staff vehicles. And then the long-term replacement of durable goods, equipment such as nozzles, fire hose, a big cost that we identified many years ago, or several years ago, and put into a replacement schedule, to meet the National Fire Protection Association standards for replacing the firefighters' protective gear, their turnout or bunker gear. And then, what's most exciting for us, and is that the largest item in the 2025 CIP is, after 165 plus years of not having a training center for the Oshkosh Fire Department, that we're completing the design work is almost done for that training center, and look forward to beginning the construction process for building out the Oshkosh Fire Department Training Center, which will be located at 221 North Sawyer, which is the old armory building you may be familiar with, right across from Lourdes. That we will take over that entire footprint and develop that to be the Oshkosh Fire Department Training Center. So much needed by our organization, very much needed and appreciated by our firefighters, so that we can, again, keep them trained to the most current standards, keep them able to safely provide, such a high level of service to those that we serve. So I said, I know that was kind of a lightning round discussion through our budgets, but like I said, I think we've spent a lot of time talking about them previously, so I don't want to belabor it with the council, because I know you have many, many more departments to discuss and have present after we're done. So with that, I'll open it up to questions.
Chief, I'll start it off with two different topics. One's operations. In the past, we've allowed, I think we gave blessing to overhire in fire based upon just staffing levels, staffing needs, knowing retirements are coming up, vacancies are going to be created. But I may be mistaken, but it's been a challenge to overhire at times too, right? To be at that number that we allowed, and now we're going to throw potentially 8 more in there. Thoughts on hiring process and being able to get what you need when you need it, I guess, is just to be blunt on it.
Yeah, that's as you mentioned, Mayor, a few years back, council approved that we would beta test, over hiring 3 firefighters, above our approved position count to try to reduce overtime. And we were able to realize that for a short period of time where we had the 3 overhires, and it did exactly what our hypothesis was of it. It offset the overtime, brought the overtime down, decreased the strain on the current employees, things of that nature. But as everybody at the table knows, and probably everybody watching knows, battle for talent across all industries is extremely difficult. So we're in at the top of the hill on the roller coaster ride for retirements. That as that cycle happens every 25 to 30 years, we're in the thick of that. So the beta test is, the city manager has, or the pilot city manager has still continued to support that. So we're currently hiring and appointing firefighters because of anticipated vacancies secondary to retirement at the end of the year and beginning of next year. So that flexibility does help us quite a bit to be able to not wait until somebody leaves and then hire them and take 3 months to train them, right? But yeah, the addition of the 8 firefighters, no doubt, I was very candid about that. It's going to be a challenge, right? It is a very competitive market. The supply does not meet the demand, not only for Oshkosh, but the American Fire Service. What is to our benefit is the timing, of adding that 4th ambulance unit, and adding those FTE mid-year, because it's very cyclical with completion of academic programs. The paramedic programs, fire programs, at the technical college conclude May to June, right? So that's when the fresh crop of candidates will occur. If we tried to add 8 at January 1st, that would have been impossible, just because that new wave of candidates is still in school. So the timing of how this was strategically implemented, mid-year, works to our favor. The other thing is we work very aggressively around recruiting. That we're already soliciting the paramedic programs, the fire programs, making them aware of that we'll be looking for firefighters. To add the recruiting, we've created tuition grant programs, Explorer programs, continue to develop that talent pipeline to build that up. So, in response to your question, Mayor, is it going to be without challenges? Absolutely not. But we've been planning for several months to years of how we increase the staffing for this and increasing our talent pipeline.
Okay. No, I appreciate that, Chief. Second one is CIP related. Fire training center. So last year's budget, we had it in there at 5.6. Now it's 7.7. It's a really big number for a renovation of an old building. We're not even building it new and making it the best it possibly can be. That's just a really big number for that facility, and I'm struggling with that. I understand we're near completion design work, and that's fine. I guess, has something changed other than the cost of goods?
Yeah, the increased cost, pardon me, excuse me, that the increased cost of construction and building material services is staggering. And I think you'll see that demonstrated consistently throughout all the CIP projects. But the other thing I would say when you look at, wow, that's a lot to just renovate an old building. I wouldn't disagree. But you have to look at what the bigger project is. It's not just the renovation of the building, it's the renovation of the entire site. So you're putting all the infrastructure, the concrete that's necessary for the training area so that the fire trucks don't sink into the asphalt. That's all of the training props, that have to be are intended to be included. And then all of the finishings, that will be the city's EOC, in addition to office spacing and the training areas. So that's inclusive of the total package, not just well, we're going to put a new roof on this and move the walls around. When you think about the totality of the project, that number is less staggering. The other thing that we arrived at, quite a few years ago, and Mayor, you will probably remember when we decided to go this direction, it was much cheaper to develop that site than acquire a new site, add infrastructure, build from scratch. That would be infinitely much more expensive than that 7 million. So while that number is large, comparatively to what it would cost for us to start from looking at a map for space to development, it would be many times that number.
I'm still struggling with that quantity, that dollar amount for that training center, knowing we've got other facility needs as well, and it's hard to swallow that number for me. So I can leave it there. We can keep chatting on the topic offline. But council, any other questions from other council members?
Yeah, and I'm not sure if Mike is best for you or Director Colmus, but the fire training center, I know we talked about it potentially becoming a regional hub where other fire and safety personnel in the area can get trained there. Are we going to have a special revenue fund for that? Are we going to be able to collect revenue off of rental? How does that work?
Yeah, relative to the potential for that, Deputy Mayor Buell, I would say yes, the potential exists. Relative to how that is accounted for and would that be a separate fund, I would defer to the finance director as to how she would want that those funds and revenues to be reflected. And if we would splinter off yet another fund of what does the training center cost us, that I think she'd be much better qualified to speak to the accounting practices than I would.
I would assume it would be in the general fund in the fire department area. So
Okay.
in my opinion, unless there's a need for transparency, but I still think you can get the transparency within the general fund, that I would assume the general fund.
Okay.
Yeah. Chief, I think some of the questions are really about what level of revenue, what offset are you anticipating with other agencies using that facility for training purposes? Not so much where it's going to be accounted I think you were going beyond that.
Correct, yeah. Like, is this gonna be something where we're gonna see, is it $500,000 a year in revenue, $1 million a year from being able to rent that out?
Yeah, I can't feature it's going to be anywhere near that.
Okay.
That's, just knowing, excuse me, the budgetary state of fire departments, particularly those surrounding us that are, primarily volunteer. The other issue is, if we were to be renting it at that frequency, that would generate, six-figure type of revenue, then we wouldn't be able to use it. It would take so much rental time, that we wouldn't be able to have it for our training purposes. We'll utilize it pretty much every single day. So we don't want to. The intent of the fire training center was to give the Oshkosh firefighters a place to train. We don't want to build them a training center and say, no, you can't use it because we've rented it out. It'd be counterproductive. So I would not anticipate a large revenue.
Okay,
amount.
I appreciate that. I just wanted to get more of a
Yeah.
clear picture.
Other council members. You hit on one thing right there, and I'm hoping you can go just a little deeper for us. Do you have an hour's estimate as to what you think OFD's usage of the training center would be, on an annual basis?
I could absolutely shoot from the hip for that answer, and I can get you a more definitive one there. But the fire department on an annual basis trains over 20,000 hours a year per individual. So and it is not, our training calendar is completely jam-packed full. That's every day. We're running multiple training sessions a day. So that number would be very high. Additionally, like an hour usage, you would have not only the training portion, but staff will have to be office there. So officing will occur there. After hours types of usage, that's going to become our central supply area. So ambulance units or fire stations that need to restock on equipment, disposable goods are going to come there. So it's, like I said, my first blush answer would be, pretty much 24/7, 365, it's going to be utilized. Because that's part of the benefit of that location, is that it's so centrally located and so proximal to the central garage, fuel, that, that's where they're going to come to the training center to restock equipment, fill up air bottles, things like that, so that it's more of a one-stop shopping concept. So, we could track training hour usage, but I think it'll be grander than that. If that makes sense.
Okay. Thank you, Chief. I'm not seeing anything else from the group. Anything more for fire department?
Just appreciate the support that we've enjoyed from council this year in entertaining our workshops on the risk assessment and standards of cover, and helping us to come to some solutions for the increasing demand on EMS services. We really appreciate that. Look forward to the next year ahead of many things on our plate to accomplish. I said appreciate the support of the council and city management staff and our community at large. That we're very fortunate here in Oshkosh to enjoy all that support. So thank you very much for your time. Again, thank you for indulging me being remote, and wish you the best of luck in the next couple of days. Thank you.
Thanks, Chief.
Thank you, Chief.
Mark or Julie, anything more on this one? Otherwise, we can.
I think I wanted to point out the enhancement. Julie really put together the page with Chief Stanley. So, Julie, why don't you just point?
I was going to also comment that the new ambulance fund is after page 199. We don't have a page number for it, unfortunately, but in case anyone was looking for that, like me and Mark were. So that is there. And then there should be an enhancement section
It's the
And-
first page in the enhancement section.
So I really pushed and I really talked with the chief and the fire department about, I'm always all about transparency. So I know we were told that this should be included in the budget document, but I wanted to make sure that we were being transparent about the full cost, including the capital costs going forward. So I worked closely with the fire department and chief. So we were trying to make this as all-inclusive as we possibly could. So the firefighter, we did put in some vacancy savings, knowing that we would not be hiring all 8 as of January 1st. So we have that $200,000 of vacancy savings right in there. But we also talked about some of the 2027 costs, so that I put 2027 after those, knowing that if we improve this enhancement, those costs are gonna have to occur in the 2027 budget. So I could just kind of going through all of this, and then the other item that we really focused on is in the revenue summary. 2025, based off of the agreement that was signed in the beginning of 2024, the per capita would have been at 3120, which would have given us, it would have been at the per capita at 80% would have been the 1993 for the 416,824. So if we do not do this fourth ambulance proposition, we would have been putting 416,824 in the 2025 budget. With this fourth ambulance, that has increased to the $815,662 amount, which is why we're showing the projected offsetting revenue of the $398,800. So again, we were just really going for that full transparency, which brings us to that just over $1 million for this enhancement. Granted, some of those are 2027 costs.
Yeah.
So-
Another way of saying it, if the enhancement wasn't approved, we would still be raising the $416,000. So the additional revenue of the 3120 per capita gets us to $815,000. So the net revenue of that is the 398, and we just wanted to make sure that was clear. And then you can see for 2026, we're anticipating once we get a full year of the ambulance unit, then we'll be up to 987. But we're not counting that yet because that's still 2026. But we wanted to show you the real difference in revenue. The city will still have to fund its share of that fourth ambulance unit, but because of the direction council gave us, we're gonna get a $400,000 bump in revenue with that.
So, just to make sure it's clear, on the tax levy page that you have, the summary page that's telling us, $1.3 million increase, 2.8% increase. This is an enhancement. It hasn't been built into the budget yet.
It is,
It is,
based off of previous
it is
council
in that one.
direction.
Okay, just want to make
This
sure
one
that that's
is built in.
just want to make sure it's
Yeah,
clear on.
because the I mean, what I referred to it as staff was, this was a pre-approved enhancement. So, yeah, I wanted to make sure that, I appreciate the question because we wanted that. And when we get to police, the 2 of the 3 positions that the chief was requesting for dealing with homeless, we put 2 of the 3 in, and we'll talk about that later when we talk about PD.
Yep, and then on the top of the enhancement documents, I did try to put whether or not the enhancement was currently included or not currently included in the proposed budget.
Very much appreciated that.
I had it in Reading, but then I got cheap and decided not to print in color. So, sorry about that.
Good cost savings. I appreciate that too.
Julie, just so I know, we talked about it via email as well, but I understand where you're coming from with this page now, even though that's not how typically it would be done in my world, which is fine. But we will see the full revenue to offset those 2027 ambulance costs in subsequent years, correct? That's where I was so confused about this. Because in here it's in 2 places. In the future, it won't need to be in 2 places, right? Because now there's a special place for it. Because we're going to see not a half year, a full year that offsets some of those 2027 costs before they occur, correct?
I'll answer it
That was my
a different way.
Yeah.
We will recoup the capital cost of the ambulances at 1/9 every year because we charge the ambulances, the units have a life of 9 years, right, Greg?
Yep.
Okay, yeah, so we'll collect that over 9 years. So we're just illustrating that we got to do the upfront money
Yep.
and then we slowly get the money back.
Although by the time it gets to 2027, we will have collected some of the upfront money anyway. Because it's different than 80%, it's full, it's 100%.
But
That
it's
was where
still
my
their,
question
the
was.
other municipalities share. So
Yeah.
it's still their share of the cost.
I get that. I
We're
understand all
charging,
that.
we're charging them for 4 ambulances, even though we haven't gotten the new one yet.
Yep.
It'll be a much lesser cost because it'll be a 20, what's the fourth unit we're throwing back in?
27
Yep.
is when we get the fourth unit.
Right, but what unit are we going to be using in reality
We'll be
next
putting
year?
a 2019 in.
Is it a 2019? Okay, it'll be a 2019.
I
So
understand all that.
we're still charging for the 2019 unit.
I understand all that, and I'm not gonna belabor the point, but when it's 1.4 million minus the extra revenue of roughly $400,000. That will be different once we've made that commitment and once we're getting revenue in, that's all I'm getting at. So it's fine, I get it, I understand why
Yeah.
it's done this way. It's just, it's, the 1.003 number is for this year and it will be different in years going forward and lesser, correct? That's what I'm trying to get at.
Potentially.
Okay.
I mean,
I'll take potentially, good enough for me.
Well, yeah, and we won't have the $482,000 ambulance.
That's what I'm trying to
Yeah,
say.
into it, yeah.
It's-
This is for
it's-
illustration,
I
not
get it.
for actual. And
Right.
your point is, actually, when we do it, it'll be reflected differently, and that's true.
Correct. And I want to make sure, I mean, for the public watching and for people who read these sheets, it's a $1 million outlay, but it's not exactly what this page says. There's a factor of time that doesn't apply to today,
Mhm.
right?
Yep,
Okay.
you are correct, yeah.
Perfect.
All right. Put something else on fire, gentlemen. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Van Goppel, appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Chief, thank you.
Thank you very much.
I referenced that we sometimes will have a few minutes to go back to finance. Council, any questions for Julie or Mark or anybody on some of the stuff she laid out just prior to fire?
Julie, is it excuse my ignorance for not knowing this, on the fund balance analysis page that we just got?
yep.
Central City Fund is a new concept to me. Is that similar previously, or is that a new thing?
It's field operations.
It's the internal service fund with the central garage and field operations. So
Got it.
they started that internal service fund, I want to say about 3, maybe 4 years ago.
Okay, so that is, and it's always been the encompassing dollar amount for all these things that are the special revenues above it, correct?
It's not the special revenues above it. We just separated the special revenue funds and the
Got it.
internal service fund. So the internal service fund is a fund by itself.
Okay,
It takes some of the labor and like expenses that Public Works has, but
Okay.
for other departments.
Got it.
So I think the shop is usually the easiest one to kind of talk about, and the fact that, like, if fire sends their fire truck to the central garage shop, Central Garage has the labor, Central Garage
Yep.
has all the equipment,
Okay.
Central Garage has any invoices and the nuts, bolts, whatever you have to do to fix the fire truck. And then they charge the fire department.
perfect. We just didn't previously include that in the general fund.
It's its own fund, so we didn't
It
usually.
used to be in the general fund, and then we
It did.
moved it out because
Okay, but now we're gonna put it back in.
no, what we're doing is we're showing that it still lives off of the general fund, even though we extracted it. Basically, what we did was we created a business center
Sure.
within Public Works.
That makes sense.
Because they do so many, they serve so many different departments. For example, they serve the sewer utility. They do the sewer cleaning for the sewer utility, not this, the folks at the treatment plant don't do that.
Sure.
So, because of so many, this was something that Russ had, Julie's predecessor had come up with to treat it more like a business center so that they can recoup the cost, not just from the general fund departments, but really from all of the different funds. But in its infancy, accounting-wise, it just wasn't working. So we recognized we were artificially hiding or artificially not reflecting those costs. We needed to get them out there. So you can see it started it started 2024, the end of 2023. It was nearly $1.5 million in the hole. It's not because the business wasn't working, it's just because we weren't fully accounting for it. Is that?
I think we were undercharging the departments. So
Sure.
we worked with Public Works and we worked on some of the software issues that we have found, and I think we were charging too low of a labor rate. So the internal service fund was digging itself into the negative by not charging the departments who were using them enough.
I get that. I'm trying to get to the point where I can get apples to apples understanding of what general fund was yesterday and what general fund is today. Because it sounds like it's different today than it was yesterday. Because some of these things, the special revenues were not included in the general fund last week necessarily. And there's a page and a half of items that are in the general fund currently, right? And always have been. So we're going to have discussions throughout the next couple of days as to what to do with the general fund, because there's more there than spec to a degree. But if we're saying that those things have changed within, and not saying that they changed within the last week, but from the time we got this document to the time we got this document, these things were not in it in the first place. And that does represent a 14% decrease in the amount of the general fund just by including these special revenues in it. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So I'm trying to figure out.
The dollars are still the same.
I understand it.
It's just that the percentage is, we feel that the percentage needs to be reflective of these other funds as well. 'Cause
Sure.
if you don't, then when these funds have an issue, they're gonna get bailed out by the general fund every single time.
I understand that, Mark. We said Moody's looks at these numbers, right? So 14% swing in interpretation that we present to somebody like Moody's to work with this, we need to know what that really is. And if it's different today than it was yesterday, I'm not saying it's not consistent, but that's an entirely different evaluative method than we had last week, is all I'm getting at.
And these funds are not moving into the general
Nope.
fund?
Well, I wish they were, personally, because that would make a lot more sense if they were. If they're not, then that changes the discussion at this table too, because if they're not moving into the general fund, then they don't make any difference with regards to general fund, or the percentage of it, or what Moody's thinks of it. It doesn't make any difference.
The history of those funds going out of the general fund was exclusively due to expenditure restraint.
Sure, I understand.
And that exists from 30 years ago. In fact, a very young Mark Roloff was coached on expenditure restraint by the Oshkosh finance director. Bill Freed, many years back, said, you want to meet my finance director? He taught me about, and he jokingly called it, you create extra socks. And that was to get around expenditure restraint. Because some years, and library's going to be a good example, sometimes library had really good years, and then they created a fund balance for themselves. But now we're in a situation where that fund balance has been depleted, and now we have to recover and make the library whole on this thing. And Mr. Eshte and Ms. Kalmus have been working together, but it's a reality that we got to fix. So if that's the case, and again, once we did the ambulance exercise, we're artificially increasing this percentage. The dollar amount's effectively the same, but that percentage was
It's actually under-reflected.
Yep.
yeah. And so, like I said, the dollar amount, I mean, we still have, if you add them all together, we still have almost $18.5 million. And our fund balance policy says we only need about $12.5 million. So we're still doing great. Were we as great as we were before on a percentage basis? No, but dollar-wise, we're as solid as ever. And that's the narrative that we'll have.
I understand all that. It's just,
To Chris's point, the story is told, it's a different story now.
That's what I'm getting at.
And so we've been using this as, hey, we're in a strong position. That's the story we've been telling, right? In a strong financial position of having excess in the general fund. And now, the next time we go, it's a different story because our percentage is lower, comparative, and we didn't do anything to change. We didn't spend it, or no shiny new objects to get that reduction. So it's a different story to tell.
that's what I'm getting at.
Yeah.
I just need to know why the story is different.
Yeah, and historically, it was kind of like a plain text reading of percent to operating budget, period.
It still is.
But-
That's
and
how it reads.
Well, it is, but because of the being realistic now, is that we've done some things, and plenty of communities do financially, to make sure that they can keep operating, and so they do these special revenue funds. We need to cover them. There needs to be coverage for them, just for the just-in-case factor.
So that
And
will be
we've pulled it out, and we just never thought about covering it until Julie said we should probably look at making sure we're covering it appropriately.
Yeah, my concern was as much about if the council was interested in using some of the fund balance, which is entirely appropriate, I didn't want them to overuse the available fund balance. And we still have, like I said, we still have 18.5 million. You could get down to 12.5 and you'd still have a very strong fund balance. But I didn't want you to think you had all this extra fund balance and think you have, well, we have more like $10 million, and then you draw it down so much, and then once you start drawing down fund balance, you're creating momentum about spending, which I don't want you guys to have to pull up so fast before you hit below 16 and then say, why didn't you tell us? I think it's appropriate for us to advise you that you want to be cautious about using the excess fund balance. And we think that using this revised method is a better way for you to start reflecting on how you want to use fund balance.
And I understand all that, and I totally respect that, and I absolutely get it. My point is, I wish this was, well, so this will be official policy going forward at some point, this page?
We
This
would
is
prefer
what
that.
we
Well,
were
I
hoping
would
to bring to
prefer that.
long-range finance,
Okay.
because like Administrator Roloff mentioned, ambulance is what really brought this to our light. It kind of, you know,
I get that.
the
It's
circumstances.
And that's a huge positive, that's a huge win, so that's not a negative, that's great. And this is technically a positive also. I'm just saying, if we're to be tasked with evaluating things based on the information we have, I'm not saying it wasn't there, but this is new as of this morning, based on what might happen tomorrow. That's entirely different than it was last week. And I don't mean that in a bad way, I'm just saying that's,
It's a static picture.
Well,
Yeah,
I did put it into my budget message, and I hadn't had as I went through the ambulance, I said, hey, Julie, why don't you start looking at this? And so that's when she created this, but I did put it in, I'm required by the fund balance policy to report in the budget where we stand on it. And as I was looking at it, it was just a cautionary tale. I won't be able to tell you this in January.
no, I know, I understand it, that's what I mean.
And
Full
so-
respect, I'm just saying, I would very much prefer these things to be policy, and if things are gonna be considered to be part of a fund, they should be part of the fund. I mean, it can't be fluid, it can't be this is in one day because we might do something bad, it's out the next day because we need Moody's to look at it better than it was before. It makes sense, I understand where we're coming from, I just want it to be consistent.
Yeah,
I guess that's the concern that I would have as well, is that when we're putting these together, we're putting these fund balance analysis together each year, what we're being creative with versus what we aren't, what we're shifting around, that's just that I kind of share the same concern with Chris on this, because, you know, if we're gonna paint a picture that looks good to creditors versus something that's more accessible to citizens, I would just like some consistency on what we're going to include here in the future. I like this, I think it's a very good kind of picture
Agreed.
of where we are. The consistency for what we include in this for the future matters to me.
Mark, I have a question for you. So I'm thinking about the fund balance for the tax situation. So I guess maybe a couple thoughts. So the fund balance is essentially a fund where, for one reason or another, money was taxed, it was not used, and it is in a balance. There's a balance for it. Is that generally correct?
No, the purpose of the fund balance, and I have this.
I'm not saying the purpose, I'm just saying, is that a factual statement that it is money that has been taxed, was not used, and is put into an account?
It's for any revenue that's in excess.
Okay, all right.
Yeah,
All right.
any and all revenues.
Okay, so, and I think then you would also agree that that fund should be used for extraordinary circumstances.
I believe it should be used for one-time investments,
Okay.
not ongoing.
So I've always thought, and I know the state of Wisconsin has done this in the past, where they've had money left over. I'm thinking of, who's the governor's name? Boy, I'm getting old and I forget these things. Anyway, there was money left over in an account, and what do we do with it? And most times governments will just blow it in on something. And this was, well, let's give it back to the taxpayers because they were the ones that funded it. And these checks went out for a couple $100, and people were laughing because it was a check for a couple $100. I'm like, it's a couple $100. You were overtaxed and you got it back. What's wrong with that? So I guess where I'm going with this is, if this money is in this account, we are not only at a point where we need to be with this fund balance, but we are over that. We have an extraordinary situation on our hands. I think it's reasonable to argue that for this circumstance, to use those funds would be, I guess, appropriate or reasonable or.
My opinion is that the state was foolish in doing that alleged rebate because then they had a deficit the next budget.
Okay, yeah.
So,
I get
but
that.
the best way to do it though, and to provide tax relief, are some of these. And the, number one is debt reduction. You use some of the fund balance to offset debt that you would otherwise take out to fund some of our capital projects.
Right, so, and maybe to expound on that, why tax more? We have a situation that we, for one reason or another, we find ourselves in, we can blame and point fingers and all that, I'm not gonna do that. But we are in this situation, so the people are upset that we are in this situation. We try to remedy the situation. We're gonna have problems with it, so, and instead of taxing more to, quote, remedy the situation, we're just using the money that has been taxed already, so we don't tax them more. And to me, because of this situation, not for just generally taking money out, but because of this situation, it seems to be reasonable.
I'll just echo for you, just so because we're going to have discussions throughout the day, it appears, but Julie and Mark, you already know this, but I'm very much on board with exactly what
As am I.
Paul is saying.
What I hear you say, and this is my concern, that you're going to use it to offset operating taxes, and then you will find yourself exactly how the state did. You will have a gross deficit in a future year, and you will say, how did we make this happen? A more effective and fiscally responsible way is to say we're going to borrow less, and when we borrow less, then we'll have less debt service, which will provide direct tax relief to the taxpayer. But it'll be over a longer period of time. It won't be immediate, it'll be a slow. Just like you were talking earlier about the ambulance revenue. We're gonna get the ambulance revenue from everybody, but it'll be a slow increase that they'll be paying us back. The idea is that if you say, let's take, there's about $6 million over the 16%. If the council said, we want to take that $6 million and we want to use it to lower the operating levy for next year, that would be fiscally irresponsible in my opinion. If you did say, however, if you, that's fiscally irresponsible.
That's not what I was saying.
All right, and that's what I fear because we weren't being direct and talking about it. If you use it to say, let's reduce our borrowing, we're actually doing that right now. We're going to be getting into public works shortly. We're actually doing that with stormwater, and that's a fiscally responsible way to do it. We're going to use our fund balance instead of borrowing. And then when you do that, you provide some immediate relief in the debt, but you get, it's a delayed benefit. It's sort of deferred gratification rather than immediate gratification. And I would strongly caution you not to take the quick fix, but take the slow, long, beneficial for everybody by doing it. And then as the tax rate, then as you need funds to fund debt service, because you borrowed less, even if you did the 6 immediately, I wouldn't necessarily go that route either, because you want to have a soft landing. But if you took half of it and then just see how the fund balance is, and then take half of that. I usually like to take half of that excess and slowly draw it down so that, as I say, you get a soft landing. And if you have a goal where you want the fund balance to land at, let's gradually go there. Just don't immediately do it. Because when you immediately do it, you create so much jolt into your finances that you're going to have a problem. And Julie and I have only talked about this very, very generally, but what more do you add to that from your experience?
I wanted to point out that I purposely did not include the debt service fund in here because that fund can fluctuate it's just like the capital projects funds can fluctuate based off of unspent bond proceeds and different items. But one item that I did want to note is the debt service fund had about a $1.5 million budget to start off 2024.
$1.5 million surplus.
Yeah.
Yes, fund balance budget,
Okay.
sorry.
Some of it, right?
Yeah. I got updated debt numbers for our upcoming 2024 debt issuance, and we will have drawn that pretty much down to zero with the 2025 budget, because that was on purpose. debt service fund is one of the funds, in my opinion, that should have a zero carrying balance. So we already are drawing down fund balance by about $1.5 million with the proposed budget. The other item, to piggyback off of what Mark was saying, was that when you start using fund balance for operating expenses, which I know he already hit this, it is very hard to come back. With levy limits the way they are, it is very hard to increase FTEs in general, every single budget cycle. I mean, when you talk in a municipal budget, 70 to 80% is personnel. So when you're in this budget, we already have, I think, 9 FTEs added. That is hard for any municipality to stomach. 8 of them as the 4th ambulance. And so we turned down pretty much every other FTE request because it is hard with levy limit restraints to add FTEs to municipalities. That is an ongoing operating expense that will not go away and will keep increasing in cost because you have cost of living increases. And health insurance, benefits, everything always increases. So if we can find, I completely understand, and I know this is a different picture to look at. I just wanted to make sure we were looking at the big picture, and this is something that I do want to bring to long-range finance so we can put it in our policy. I would just recommend looking for those one-time budget items that we could possibly move to fund balance if that is the push.
Well, but aren't we gonna, okay, we have a 15% deficit in our commercial assessment, so are we not going to get that 15% in a previous year? That would be more revenue than what we are getting now because that's going to increase 15% to get us back to the 100% the state requires us to be at?
We're not going to get any additional revenue.
That's not how taxes work, Paul. The pie's the pie. The pie doesn't get bigger based upon value.
Yeah, but I know, but if you'll increase, the rate will be the same, but you're going to increase the value, so the amount of money would increase.
No, the rate will go down, just like it is this year. We're gonna go down $4. We're gonna go down to about 33% of our tax rate's gonna go down.
The
But-
burden, go ahead. Sorry.
I saw a campaign ad, and it drives me crazy because I know too much. But, you can't say your taxes are going down because your rate's going down.
But if the rate stays the same.
But the rate will not stay the same. The rate
It's up
is,
to the council.
the rate we're recommending to council is a 33% decrease in the rate. But the reality is, we're still collecting 2.83% more. That's the real number. I've always said, focus on the levy, because people, liars figure and figures lie, folks. And for us to tell you that, I could come in here and say, hey, I got great news, we're dropping the tax rate by 33%. That is totally unfair and misleading to the taxpayer. It's a 2.83% increase. That's my recommendation to you guys. But it's recommending something that I believe is responsible given our situation. I know the impact on the residences is going to be big, but the fact is that when the business or the commercial values are brought up, we'll probably tweak the rate again depending on what happens. But we don't know, because we don't know how residential is going to get impacted next year either. That could very well increase as well. And we know that business will increase, we know commercial will increase, and residential may increase. So we've got to be ready for that. If they both increase, we're probably going to see a reduction in the rate. But will this staff come back next year with a recommendation on an increase in the levy? I can almost guarantee you that that's what they'll do. How much that'll be will depend on a variety of factors. But we have levy limits that prevent us from increasing the levy too much anyway. That's the governor on us no matter what we do, and that's what Julie's concerned about. If we use fund balance in lieu of levy, we won't be able to make up for that next year, and that will cause significant deficits, which is why when the state gave that rebate about 25 years ago, 2 years later, their next budget, they had all these deficits that they had to bail out because they used these one-time revenues to really provide operating relief, and you don't want to do it operating relief. Put it at debt service, put it into a good capital project, do it on something that will provide relief to everybody in the future over a longer period of time. That's really what I'm saying.
Julie, just to follow up on your point about debt service, you said it was another $1 million that was taken off of the projected year-end fund balance, so that number's actually, and I could be wrong here, 17 million instead? Because you said there was an extra, because debt service wasn't included here.
I did not include this, so it's not showing, I mean, if I would have had this in here, it would have been a positive fund balance that
Plus
we're
one,
reducing.
but that's gonna be spent down anyway, so it's.
But to me, I think that's a separate scenario than this, because there's a ton of other funds, and they all have different fund balances. I was just saying that we are already drawing down the debt service fund by $1.5 million, but I didn't show debt service on this one, because I feel like that should be looked at separately from general fund, if that makes sense.
Fair enough, I mean, if it's gonna zero out anyway, it doesn't really matter.
All right, so we've gone a little into Public Works this time. Why don't we move into Public Works session 1, and then there will still be more time to continue this conversation. We're not going to solve this one in a few minutes. So, Mr. Robbie, welcome, staff.
Thank you.
Come on up.
I used to sit over here.
I know, throwing you for a loop this year. Put you on the hot seat down there.
Hi, how are you?
Yeah, and good morning.
Good morning.
But I can't even sell this. I don't know. But I don't know where they go. Feels like we're getting ready for like a football match or something. More like a negotiation. I'm just glad there's no lawyers in the room.
Ouch.
Oh, they're later.
James, I assume field ops is, from looking at the faces here, it looks like we're at field ops, right?
Yeah.
James, why don't you do some introductions? We got a handful of new people.
And that's, I was actually going to start with a little bit of an introductory statement, if I may, and then we'll get into some of the staff introductions. Thank you, Mayor and Council. Really today I want to start with a little bit of a brief introduction. As Council is aware, the department has made quite a number of new staff introductions in the past year. A lot of that stemmed late last year. We had to make a very difficult decision to move on from some staff that unfortunately did not share the department and the organization's beliefs and values. Through that process, the department has developed a new mantra, communication, collaboration, cooperation. I'm excited with the management team that we have in place now. Several of the managers that you're going to see over the next couple of hours are new and have been in their positions for, some a few months, some maybe a year or two. This group has really stepped up and are doing great things for this department, this organization, and our community. So with that, we'll start with some general introductions of the staff that I have here with me this morning. I know most of you have met them probably only once, so we'll start on the end with Eric.
My name is Eric Moran. I'm the Sanitation Division Manager.
We'll make him stand, but
Dylan Rollo, I am the Mechanics Division Manager.
Andy Hintz, Streets Division Manager.
Brian Lemke, Field Operations Manager.
And as we cycle some of the rest of the staff through, we'll do the same thing. So if we may, I'd like to start with Sanitation Division, which is on page 172 of your budget book. Going to bounce around a little bit, unfortunately, but that's kind of the way it works out better for getting my staff in and out. So give you a moment to flip. Sanitation Division, really as we look at the strategic plan, strengthening neighborhoods, improving quality of life, by providing regular collection of refuse. In this case, we're talking the garbage. Recycling will come up in another discussion right after that. The division's also responsible for maintenance and management of several properties that are formerly utilized as municipal landfills. Some of those sites that are being monitored include a Timmerman Quarry site, Quarry Park, Knapp Street Quarry, and the former Keenest and Paulus sites. Several of those are kind of grouped all together in the 17th and Knapp Street area, with Timmerman being kind of the outlier down at 35th and Marvel Medalist area. Sanitation and recycling both continue to be among some of the highest rated divisions in the annual citizen survey. Some accomplishments and what's transpired through this year. Through the first 9 months of the year, January through September, garbage collection totals have really remained quite steady as compared to last year. 11,150 tons this year versus 10,900 last year, so staying very steady. Over the past few years, annually we average around 15,500 tons. Looks like we're on a very similar track for this year. We do continue to work with our environmental consultants on the long-term maintenance and management plans for those former landfills. Those are very highly regulated by the Department of Natural Resources, so we have to do a lot of work with the DNR to see if we can alter any of those monitoring and maintenance plans and reduce some of the frequency of some of the testing that we do. One of the other big things since Dylan has come on board is our two managers work together to really develop some new specifications for our vehicles, really trying to standardize on our chassis. With that new standardized specification, we are anticipating reducing some overall capital costs, but also improving our overall operation and maintenance costs, because Dylan's staff will have less odds and ends that they have to stock or try to keep track of. By sticking with a standardized chassis, you can have less parts in inventory around. One of the other things that we've done and are still in the process of implementing is installing tablets in all of the trucks and implementing the Evolve software, which is the same software package that is used by our site plan review staff and our inspection services staff. That allows the drivers to enter violations in real time right from the truck, rather than having to write a note down, bring it in, turn it over to the office assistant, who then has to enter it. And so really trying to reduce and eliminate some double handling of paperwork. Some of our bigger budgetary impacts: the Winnebago County Solid Waste Management Board is increasing the tipping fee $2 a ton up to $55 per ton for material brought into the transfer station. And really, it's that increase that accounts for the changes in our budget. We do continue with their staff to perform some basic preventative maintenance services on their vehicles. That really helps alleviate some of the workload in the mechanics division as the fleet continues to develop and adapt, and as we talk about get older, taking some of that easier stuff off of their staff so they can work on the harder stuff. It really helps keep them moving as well. So I don't know if anybody has any questions on that particular division.
I do, actually.
Okay.
So, and I apologize, I didn't give you a heads up on this. I talked to Mark very little bit about it. I know it's not going to be something that's added to here, but I get requests often for a large item pickup day or something like that for sofas or refuse like that outside of the university area, like so citywide. I just want to talk about like the feasibility and the cost impact that would bring, or anything that you have for me right now.
Certainly, I know Mr. Esslinger brought that up at the last council meeting. That is a topic that's been talked about over the years. Following our last council meeting last week, I did ask staff to start refreshing some of that research that's been done over the years. We don't have that information available for you yet, because I did just ask them to start looking into that last Wednesday. Okay. I know there's obviously some costs associated with that. And whether, Eric's staff, may not be able to do that, so it may fall to, utilizing some of the street division staff to accommodate if we do go down that road. So that's a part of the analysis that we're going to need to look into, as far as, what is the overall cost for, getting rid of any of those materials that we pick up, but also what is the cost to pick them up.
Sure.
But, unfortunately, I don't have that available for you right now, but it is something that I have asked the staff to start looking into, updating that research.
Thank you.
I'd like to second Carl's point here. This is something that I think is a nice program to have. Other communities do this. Really, it saves people time from going up to Little Street to have to drop off some of the larger items that they may want to get rid of. So I'm excited to see what you guys bring back.
Yeah, I'd rather have,
I don't think they would necessarily need to go to Little Chute. I think they can go to the transfer station on County Y. But yeah, that is something that, like I said, we've just started looking into it after, Ms. Erslinger brought it up at the last council meeting. I wanted to get everybody started.
I think the bigger issue in the past hasn't necessarily been the cost, because there is a cost, and the cost you can measure out. It's like, all right, is it going to take overtime? Is it going to take more tipping fees? That's actually the easy part. I think the challenge was that is it when you do it and how it's done, because a lot of folks think that this could be an opportunity for landlords to simply, have their tenants just dump things, and then it becomes a challenge that they'll put it out more. I think that was more of the issue than it was really the cost. And Andy, I know you've been around long enough to you've seen this.
So, a lot of times in the past, if you have, move-in days, move-out days, let's just say in the college area, and a good program like that, generally, the intent is great, but then all of a sudden, you go over and you got, 7 things sitting there, and that tenant, that landlord says, we'll just put everything out there. Now you got a little bit of everything. So, just like most good programs, there's obviously people who take advantage of those, but I think that was more of the roadblock or kind of the issues that kind of came up at that time.
Yeah, but the examples you guys use it's not people who are abusing the system.
Right.
And how do you balance that out? Yeah. The cost, I think these guys can punch out the cost for you, and you'll be able to take a look at it. It's just the policy implications, because, you poke a balloon and it pops out somewhere else, and that's really good.
and that's maybe, and operationally, you guys will figure it out, but maybe it's something you do in October when it's not, a time for move in, move out, or, whatever, we can get around that.
There you go.
Mr. Almy, let me just add one thing. Obviously, you can do the analysis on, what we can handle, and I'm confident you're going to do that. But also, just so the council can maybe analyze this and determine it, and I'm not saying we should do this, but what would it take to contract it out to a private company to do it?
Yeah, that would certainly be a part of the analysis, because, the last time I think we talked about this was probably about 3 or 4 years ago, I think, and that was another part of what we looked at was working with, at the time, I think we were talking with Waste Management to see what kind of a cost that would be associated with that. So that certainly would be a part of, as I say, refreshing our analysis to see what it would be, is, not only, trying to tackle it with staff if it's possible, but like you said, refreshing a contractor cost as well.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else on sanitation? All right, then we'll move on to recycling, which is on page 167, so just before garbage.
Well placed.
Recycle the
Again, as with the garbage collection, recycling, fits into the strengthen our neighborhoods and improve quality of life from our strategic plan. The state of Wisconsin continues to provide partial reimbursement for our recycling program. The monies that go towards the recycling program are collected on landfill tipping fees. Yard waste drop-off site is also operated and managed by the recycling division. And as I mentioned before, both sanitation and recycling continue to be among the highest rated divisions in our citizen survey. Yard waste drop-off this year has been pretty consistent. We're up a little bit over last year, 42,800 visits through September versus 36,700 from last year. So we are up a little bit from last year. As council may remember, 2020 was a record year for the yard waste drop-off site. As many people were now working from home or not working at that time, there was a lot of yard work that was getting done. As far as recycling material being collected, virtually identical between the first 9 months of this year and last year, 2,850 tons versus 2,890 tons, so virtually identical from year to year. as I mentioned before, Eric and Dylan have worked together to update the vehicle specifications, because those do go together. The side loading trucks, those are the same specification, not only for the chassis, but also the body, for both sanitation and recycling. But one of the big things that Dylan worked on was updating that chassis specification. And again, getting the tablets installed in the truck so that drivers can do stuff real time out in the field, rather than writing a note down and bringing it back and passing it back and forth. In this case, Solid Waste Management Board is increasing the recycling handling fee from $5 a ton to $10 a ton. Commodities that are received from recycling are very volatile. In 2022, we received a little over $120,000. In 2023, it was $19,000. Currently, right now, we're anticipating around $20,000, but there are just so many variables that go into that it's very hard to try to speculate what that might be. And as with garbage collection, recycling is also doing some of those very basic preventative maintenance items on their vehicles, greasing, cleaning, just kind of the general taking care of them, so mechanics don't have as much work to deal with. Any questions on the recycling side?
Just one quick one.
Yes.
What's the proper way to handle shredded documents for a homeowner?
Based on the way that the Winnebago County Solid Waste Management Board and the Outagamie County Recycling Board are currently functioning, shredded paper gets bagged and put in your garbage now.
Okay.
Unless there are other places you could take it to be recycled, but if you want to get rid of it as a part of our department's collection, right now it does unfortunately have to be bagged and put in the garbage. And the primary reason for that is the recycling processing at the Outagamie County MRF, the municipal recycling facility. It was creating a lot of paper contamination in other products when they run it through their sorting and screening facility. So it was actually reducing the quality of their other products to the point where it was negatively affecting their ability to sell those products.
And one other small thing is, I would imagine the brakes on these vehicles, how long do they last? And I mean, do you buy, does it matter if you buy cheap brakes and you rotate them all the time? Or do you buy very expensive brakes, pads, whatever, rotors?
I guess I'll refer that to Dylan.
That was part of our process of updating kind of our chassis spec. We did some research on styles of brakes as well. If we wanted to stay with what we call a drum brake, which is very conventional, or go to a disc brake.
Right.
We had heard that disc brake had much longer life expectancy to it. When we asked a couple of municipalities that were going with those, they said they actually weren't having that great of luck with them, and we're going back to the drum style brakes. But typically on the drum style brakes, they go by weight. So how much weight you're expected to carry. And with the new spec, we bumped that weight number up to try and get that length out of them. Unfortunately, we do have premature failures when it comes to, they like to separate the pad from the actual metal on the shoe, from the road salt and things like that, and that causes a premature crack. But for the most part, we tend to get a year or two out of a set of brakes, depending on, again, what happens with that life expectancy in terms of the road salt and the conditions that are kind of out of our hands as the maintenance area.
Anything else with that? All right, we will move next into the internal service funds. I know there was a little bit of discussion right before we came up about that. The internal service funds are on page 384 of your book, and I know there was I believe, Julie, there was a new handout from this morning as well, or is there one now going out?
I think it is still on the table, that fund balance analysis. It really doesn't pertain too much to the internal service fund.
I thought Denise was passing out a new one of these.
Oh, they should be in your books already.
Oh, okay, they were already in your books, thank you. All right, looks like everybody's gotten there. As the discussion right before we came up, a few years ago, the some of the staff, both the garage and in street division, were broken out into an internal service fund. Before that, not so much in fleet, but in streets, the budgeting of the staff was very spread out. It was not all in one location. So we'll talk about that a little bit more as we roll into the street side of the internal service fund. Fleet management, as far as our strategic plan goes, effectiveness of government and improving and maintaining our infrastructure. Our vehicles are another form of infrastructure, and it's one of our biggest forms of it as far as what we use on a day-to-day basis. The staff are maintaining not only all the vehicles and equipment of the Public Works Department, but also several other departments as well. The fleet management also manages all of the fuel for the entire city, with the exception of Transit Division. Due to the federal funding with Transit, their fuel is done separately on their own. But the entire rest of the city fleet fuel is managed by fleet management. That includes police, fire, public works, all of the departments. On average, as an organization, they're managing approximately 115,000 gallons of unleaded fuel, approximately 150,000 gallons of diesel fuel, and around 10,000 gallons of compressed natural gas annually. Some big things that we were able to accomplish this year, utilizing some of the ARPA funding, we were able to make several improvements for the staff in this area, really creating a lot of more effective and efficient operations. Using that ARPA funding, we were able to get laptops and install a secure wireless network in the garage. That way the mechanics have access right in their bays to be able to pull up their work orders, make updates to their work orders, and add whether they have parts or other things. 384, Mark. So they can do all that work right in their bays now, instead of, I got to add this. Okay, I got to go back to the administrative staff and say, hey, I need to add this to the work order, add that. They can do all of that right in their bays right now from their laptops. We're also able to do several fleet management software upgrades and updates so that we can actually more effectively utilize the power of the software. Previously, only a very small portion of the software's effectiveness was being utilized. So as Ryan and Dylan have come on board this year, we've really kind of expanded that to utilize more of the power of the software that we have. We also picked up a lift for light equipment for maintenance activities. When I say light equipment, pickup trucks, even the ambulances, that's kind of the top end of what this lift can do. And primarily it's for doing things like oil changes, brakes, those kinds of things. Before that, honestly, that work was being done on the ground with the mechanics using crawlers to get under the vehicles. So, a big safety and productivity improvement by getting that lift installed. We were also able to purchase several diagnostic software packages. We talked about kind of the wide variety of vehicle chassis we had. Unfortunately, that also comes with a wide variety of diagnostic softwares that we need to maintain in order to effectively diagnose what's wrong with a piece of equipment. So we're able to actually get diagnostic softwares for all of the equipment that we have, and hopefully going forward as we standardize, maybe we can tone that down a little bit to just the specifics. But there was a lot of equipment that we did not have the proper software to run diagnostics on. We're also able to purchase a heavy-duty transmission jack that replaced some equipment that honestly it was being used for a purpose it wasn't designed or intended for, which is a very significant safety concern on all of our parts. As a part of our organizational structural changes, we did reclassify our preventative maintenance technician to a lead fleet and equipment mechanic. That technician position we had been unable to fill for quite some time. During our transition earlier this year, our interim manager, they had a lead mechanic position in their home base, so we implemented that during the interim, and really as Ryan and Dylan looked at it, we felt that was a much more efficient way to operate the division going forward. As Julie was mentioning earlier with the internal service funds, the cost of providing these services are charged back or allocated to the appropriate expense accounts, whether that is, the utilities or fire or parks, or, so it's all accounting wise charged back using the software. As far as the cost of fuels, that's very volatile. It's very hard to predict, and quite frankly, we have absolutely no control over the cost of fuel. You could have a weather event in the Gulf Coast that drives fuel prices up, or civil unrest elsewhere in the world. It's just so very hard to predict. And excuse me, as our fleet continues to grow but also age, it's really created a lot of extra work on our mechanic staff. As we've talked about with council as far as replacing equipment, there's a lot of equipment that we used to be able to order and have in-house 6 to 9 months later. That equipment is now taking 2, 3, 4 years to get here. Council may recall earlier this year, you approved ordering a fire truck that'll get here, I believe, in 2027. The same holds with some of our public works equipment as well. We're placing orders now for stuff that we'll likely not see until 26 or 27. Looking back at some of our older orders, I believe we still got a couple of 2022 orders that are still yet to be received. So, we're going on 2+ years waiting for some of that equipment that was ordered in 2022. So all of that does make it a lot more challenging for Dillon staff to take care of equipment that probably should have been replaced, but we're just still waiting on getting the replacement stuff. Any questions with that part of it? I know in your budget book, I think both mechanics and field operations are combined in the internal service fund.
Couple questions.
Sure.
First is, in terms of our fleet age over time, is that trending up or trending down? You said the fleet's getting older, it's larger and also older given the bottlenecks in supply chains and whatnot. But I guess on a 10-year moving average, do we kind of know if our fleet's getting younger or older? Have we made improvements on that, or is it getting worse in terms of the fleet age?
I don't know, have you looked at that real close, Dylan?
Our fleet age overall is going up, but in terms of how long we're keeping vehicles, that's part of our rewriting our specs to try and extend that time period out. We're kind of right on that head right now of when we plan on getting rid of it is when we typically get rid of it. But again, rewriting that spec to one solid vehicle is much easier to keep it in the shop, get it in, get it out. The techs know about it. Techs know what they're going to look for. All the trucks are the same. They're the same brand, same engine, same chassis. It makes it a lot quicker, and it makes it easier to spend more time on those vehicles and know more about them to extend that life. So that's kind of the whole purpose of just streamlining everything to extend those lives of those vehicles, to make the fleet be able to, instead of 7 years, maybe we can stretch that to 9 years. Instead of 9 years, maybe we can stretch it to 11, and we start kind of going up from there to really extend the life of when we expect to order new ones.
Okay, that's great. I mean, service life extension programs, I'm all for it. So I guess we'll see over time in this, this fund here that billables will rise over time.
Correct. Unfortunately, it's kind of the baby idea at this point. Sure. It's really has to grow into something, but we had to start somewhere. So we're kind of at that starting point right now, and hopefully see those trends continue to grow as we get the new orders in and the new body styles in, where we're really focusing on.
Excellent.
This was part of the intention of the central garage when it was built, and how you guys have organized it over the last decade, basically. That the intention was to, by doing some of this maintenance in-house, by doing certain things in-house and doing it on a regular schedule, you've hopefully, and you have, extended the useful life of many of our pieces of equipment.
Yeah, a lot of the street division equipment in particular has seen a life extension due to just the facility and the operations that we have, by keeping all those trucks inside versus outside, by running all those trucks through the wash bays on a regular basis. We've been able to extend vehicle life that way. Now, as Dylan said, by standardizing our equipment and chassis, we're going to be able to do that again, because the mechanics are going to be able to be much more familiar with the chassis. It's, instead of, maybe an oversimplification, but, you're not working on, a Dodge, a Chevy, a Ram, a Toyota. You're always working on one chassis, one engine. Every chassis, every engine has its own, electrical issues or, mechanical issues, and everyone has a different issue. None of them have the same issue. They're always different. So by standardizing, again, it's an effort to make Dillon staff more efficient and then extend the life further.
Sure.
Gentlemen, when we retire a vehicle or a chassis or a piece of machinery, whatever the case may be, is our policy to basically run it into the ground, or is it on a cycle? And then if we do, if there is life left in that vehicle or truck or whatever it may be, what's the method for disposing of it?
We generally are not trying to run them until they completely fall apart, because that becomes a safety issue for our staff as well. As far as disposing of equipment, we evaluate when we go out to purchase new equipment. One of the things we will ask for as a part of the quoting process is a trade-in, and then staff will evaluate whether we feel that is an appropriate value or whether we feel we'll get a better value by taking that particular piece of equipment to a municipal vehicle auction. I think of late, we've had more of them going to auction than on trade-in, so we've been getting better value that way than taking the trade-in. So it is something that, as we are looking at each piece of equipment, we are evaluating multiple options to try and get the best value for that piece of equipment that's going out of service for our fleet.
I wanted to go back to the point that, James talked about at the outset, and then just, what we've been doing recently. One of the other collaborations that I think has worked very well, and it's too bad the fire chief's gone. Chief Stanley and James worked very closely together to get the fire apparatus to be maintained by the mechanics division. They were previously had one mechanic devoted at the fire department for just fire vehicles, but when that person was out, vehicles would go untouched. That person, it was just one person. So 2 vehicles go down, there's still only one person. Now it goes over to the shop, and they know the importance of fire apparatus. When they roll in, they know they got to get it in and get it out. But when they've got that, and it's a snowstorm, and Andy's got his trucks that need working, Dylan's got a pool of people that you can bring in to get these things worked on. And I think that level of collaboration, it's a dividend from having a better facility,
right?
But it's also having people trained that know what they're doing, and I think you have at least 2 people that are trained in fire apparatus maintenance, if not more.
Well, just one that's got EVT level 2 right now. The second one recently left, but we do have some staff that are working on getting it. So there are 3 different levels of EVT, emergency vehicle technician certifications. That is something that Dylan's been working with his staff, and we've made some adjustments to our position descriptions to be able to, as they get those certifications, be able to move up to a higher level of position. Because at the end of the day, that vehicle can't leave the shop without being checked over by one of those people who are certified. And each level of that certification pertains to different components of the vehicle. So, one part might be electrical, brakes, the pumping system. So depending on what level of certification depends on who needs to look that vehicle over before it leaves. And you make a good point, Mark. Quite honestly, when Chief Stanley and I worked on that consolidation, his battalion chiefs were spending a ton of time driving to Wyega Fremont to take their trucks in to get service, because Red Power, which is an hour drive away, was the closest place that could service those fleet. And that's a lot of what they did, was just drive back and forth taking trucks. Now they just drive them from whichever station over to our facility, and if it's something that we can't get to or don't have the skills for, we'll arrange to get it over to Red Power to get taken care of. Anything else you want to add on the EVTs, Dylan?
Not a ton. Brian and I spent a lot of time with James trying to get that master mechanic level position in there just as a growth. I felt very strongly, as well as the other 2, that we needed some type of growth in the mechanics area to really keep people interested. In that EVT was a really good focus on this is a good level to get at, and for you to kind of move to that next level as a mechanic. So helping them out with that and kind of having everybody on board has been really excellent.
Do you anticipate that overall operational readiness rates for fleets across the city will increase and improve over time with that?
That's our hope. The initial goal is to just get 2 master mechanics. Overall, we'd like to just think that if we had a whole fleet of master mechanics, that we'd be sitting pretty well. But obviously, that's not always the case. But in the initial looks of it, yes, that's what the hope is.
Do we know what the overall operational readiness rate is today?
Not off the top of my head here.
Any other questions on that? All right, well, we'll move into the street or fleet field operations side of the internal service fund. Again, improving and maintaining our infrastructure as far as the strategic plan goes. Those staff, are responsible for not only maintaining the streets, but also the sanitary sewer system, the storm sewer system, and all of our city-owned regional stormwater detention facilities. They also continue to support a wide variety of other departments. From a community development standpoint, as the RDA purchases properties that need demolition, it's our field operations staff that perform that. From the parks, they do a lot of paving operations for parks and the cemetery. Water utility, they patch all of the asphalt streets where water main or service breaks have occurred. On the sewer side, televising and maintaining sewers and manholes. And as I said, on the storm water utility side, again, televising and maintaining manholes, sewers, and taking care of our regional storm water management practices. And also our street sweeping and inlet cleaning are performed by their staff. Some key accomplishments this year, we were really focusing a lot on organizational structure as we were going through our transition, created the overall division manager position. We kept the 2 supervisor positions, and we transitioned from seasonal lead construction workers to year-round lead equipment operators. We had, overall, there was a couple of those lead positions went up to equipment operators, the rest went down to regular equipment operators. Those lead equipment operators all have tablets, so they're able to access all of their work orders and update their work orders out in the field. So again, they're not writing a note, coming back into the office, turning it in, and then somebody else saying, well, I can't read your handwriting. What does this say? They're doing it all live out in the field with their tablets. Did a lot of paving, the trails within the Menominee Park Zoo, some walking trails within South Park, and I think we've got kind of an annual paving in the cemetery as well, don't we, Andy?
Every year, so.
And also, they helped with the demolition of the old Menominee Park, Menominee Beach House building. Over the past several years, this division has experienced significant vacancies. At one point in time, we peaked with 7 vacancies out of 33 staff. Obviously, during winter months, that is very problematic because we have 30 snowplow routes, and if we only have 25 people to put on those routes, it takes us a lot longer to get done. Since our reorganization and our change in leadership and our structural reorganization, that number of vacancies has gone down. Currently, we only have 2 vacancies in this division, and honestly, a part of that is because we asked HR to hold off on filling some positions so we could get the reorganization done. So the efforts that we've spent over the last year have paid some very significant dividends in keeping staffing in this division. Anybody have any questions on that part of it? All right, we'll move on to page 115 of your budget book. That is the general fund portion of the central garage division. The biggest things to note here, again, improving our infrastructure, maintaining our fleet. The division assists with writing specifications for all vehicle purchases that are approved within the capital improvement program, not just our public works vehicles, but all vehicles across the organization. One of the key things, obviously, we onboarded a new manager this year. Dylan's been working very closely with our division staff on updating a lot of vehicle specifications with a long-term goal of not only reducing capital costs, but reducing our operational costs as well. As we mentioned before, we've still got 22 and 23 vehicle orders that we're waiting on, but we got specifications written for everything that was approved in the 24 budget. As far as the staffing wise goes, really the only position left in this budget is the manager's position and a portion of the field operations manager position. All the rest of the technicians are in that internal service fund, so they can be appropriately charged back based on the vehicles they're working on. Any questions there? If not, the street division portion of the general fund on page 110 of your books. Again, maintaining, improving our infrastructure, really as far as the general fund side of the street division goes, that's taking care of our streets. Our asphalt, our annual asphalt overlay program, that's a program Andy's been very intimately involved in his 15 years with the organization. Andy, I think Riff Road again this year, we were finishing that up, is that right?
Yes, Riff Road and then Edgewood up in the northwest part of the city. So we have gone from a cold mix overlay program to basically an overlay program now. About 6-7 years ago, we went away from the cold mix that we used. Back in the day, the idea was it was very pliable. When you put it down, it would move. Basically, you were trying to get 4 or 5 years. And we had those roads on there so then they could be put on the CIP for more appropriate overall reconstruct. What we found is that over the years, just playing with the oils and doing some of these things, that we were able to get more involved, do a little bit more prep work every year, and then use traditional hot mix. And we were finding that on a lot of these roads, we were not only getting 4 to 5, we were getting 10 years. You push it out that much farther. Now, as we've gone through this program, we've also done a really good job of working with the engineering group to find out, okay, where is this more appropriate? Instead of just maybe grabbing a road that was a 2 or a 3 and then just doing it, where is it going to get the biggest bang for the buck? And the last couple of years, we've been out on Riff Road and Edgewood, and those are great roads to do this program on. One, the drainage, there's you don't have to worry about curb and gutter. Everything flows to the ditches, and it can be done in a very quick way. So this is a program that has not only grown into something that I don't even think it was designed for at the start, but it's also something that that we have gotten very efficient at. And like I said, so we already have ideas for where we're going to go, not only next year, but maybe the year after. Obviously, looking at the CIP and how that changes. But it's been a great program. It is something that we get a lot of positive feedback, and also, again, it kind of turned into something that maybe it wasn't designed for when it started. I think all the way back in 2000 now. So, but that's a good program.
One of the other, the biggest probably budgetary impact for this budget line item is road salt. Our current budget assumptions account for the cost of our guaranteed purchase through the DOT contract and also reserve, but if we need to do an early fill in the fall. As of right now, the salt dome is very, very, very full. In fact, with the mild winter this past winter, we actually were not able to take our entire guaranteed purchase. Usually there's some penalties associated with that, but the DOT had a lot of areas where they needed to get some extra salt. So Andy worked with their staff, and the DOT was basically buying up all the municipalities that had excess guaranteed fill left over. They were buying all that up and using it to fill their salt storages. So at the end of the day, it worked out very well for us this past year. But that is kind of the single biggest challenge is, what kind of a winter are we going to have? A winter like last year where we maybe used 2,000 tons?
Just under 2,000,
or some of the winters where we've used 5,000 ton. It's a challenge.
We should have sold it to them at 10%.
Well, that wasn't, they said no. They just bought it.
They covered the cost instead of us having to find
right.
somewhere to put it. So and normally we would work with the county and store some in their facilities, but their facilities were all full too.
Yeah, they were actually, most communities that I talked with, and then also talking with the DOT, most communities had this very same problem, because historically, on an average, as a community what you use. We generally use around 3,500 as an average, okay? Some years you get a little bit more. Last year is the first year that I can ever remember that we used as minimal as we did, but I think everybody would agree last year's winter was more of an anomaly. Just that's probably something that's not going to happen for a while. But with that said, we were able to then fill our barn, and then with the with the extra, we generally do work with the county, and we have a very good working relationship with them. But it was then they had no room. So I thought actually in this case everybody did a very good job working with the DOT. At times I know can be challenging, but in this case it was very, very well done. And basically all it was really some phone calls to the right people. And that salt that we had a contract for, basically it just never got trucked to us. It just never got brought, and basically they just took it right off. So it really worked well. I think it was something new for everybody, even at the state level. But no, as James said, we are full. We put as much salt in our dome as we could, and but it also reflects then obviously in the budget for this coming year. But salt is very, granted it's volatile too. I mean, there was last year we paid $83, and next year it's 87. The next year it's going to be over 90, and there was a time where I can remember when it was
Five years ago, it was 65.
65. So, but no, we're in a really good position to start out this season.
All right, any other questions there? If not, I'll let the field operations crew go, and we'll bring up the utilities crew.
Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
We'll be starting with the water utility on page 352. What's that?
Yeah, we need somebody to break up.
Too much of a pattern there.
Thanks, Sheriff.
Okay. I appreciate your cooperation. We'll see if we can. All right. Most of this crew you've probably seen before, but we'll start with a few introductions. We've got a few newer people up here. Brad, we'll start with you.
I'm Brad Rokas, Water Filtration Plant Manager.
Cheryl Sell, Water Distribution Manager.
Steve Godey, Assistant Director of Public Works and Utilities General Manager.
Jason Ellis, Utilities Operations Manager.
This is your third one now, Jason?
Technically, yes. The first one I was in the
a week
position
into
for a
it?
week.
I'd say it was a day or two, basically, yeah.
All right, so thank you again. Water utility services really, as far as ties to the strategic plan, supporting economic development, improving and maintaining our infrastructure and strengthening our neighborhoods. Our primary mission is to protect public health and safety by providing safe drinking water and an adequate supply for industry and fire demands. Some of our accomplishments with the water utility this year, once again, we were able to secure some safe drinking water loan program funding to continue assisting property owners with the replacement of private side lead services. Took a lot longer to get the paperwork from the state than I think any of us thought it was going to, but there was a lot of, I'll say, communication challenges between the state and the federal government that really held that agreement up. We are continually working with our communications consultant to update our water utility web pages to make information more available and easier to find. We've started the work on the overall department pages. It really started with the water utility, and we're continuing to refine that web page as we go. We have continued with our residential cross-connection program, and we just recently posted our water service material inspection and data inventory to the website. Both of these programs, the cross-connection and the service inspection and survey, are required by the DNR. As far as the private or the service material database and online posting, that was a requirement of the federal lead and copper rule. So that information went live last week?
Yes.
Continuing with our Get the Lead Out program to help remove residential lead services. Several of Brad's staff have been at numerous community events, speaking with whomever they can get to speak with them. I think they're fairly regular at the farmers market, right, Brad?
Yes. Yep.
And several other places. They've got a kind of a traveling informational display that they go out and try to talk to whoever they can get to talk to. We've also continued our public information campaign through our communications consultant, engaging in a lot of social media, local media outreach as well. I think as a part of that, I think, Steve, you've had a couple of Green Bay TV interviews as a part of that program. We had completed our federal uncontaminated UCMR
Unregulated contaminant monitoring.
Yes, thank you. Program, again, for PFAS, that was one of the new requirements in the most recent rule. We have continued gathering some informational samples beyond what was required by the lead and copper rule. Continuing to work on the Clearwell replacement project, is, a lot of discussion about that at last week's council meeting. We've got a public information meeting coming up this week as well. So we're continuing to move that forward. Plans have been submitted to the state agencies as well for their review. They will take a long time to review. I believe they get 90 days to review, and generally they don't get done early. We've also had a lot of our informational materials, whether it be lead and copper information or also some of the other information that we distribute, translated to both Spanish and Hmong, trying to increase the availability of our information for our non-English speaking residents. We have, through our communications consultant, we have been able to find a translating service that's very reasonable to work with and very, very responsive and very quick to get stuff done for us. And also kind of new this year, we have begun providing drinking water supply to one sanitary district in the town of Oshkosh, the area just outside of Winnebago Mental Health. It's kind of referred to as the Winnebago Sanitary District. They are properties in the town that, when they were originally built, they were staff housing for Winnebago Mental Health and were provided by their own drinking water facility. Over the years, they ceased operation of their facility and connected to city water and started selling off those homes that used to house staff to other people. And over the past few years, the state's decided we're done providing water utility services. So the sanitary district was formed and we're providing water to that district now. Some of our kind of budgetary impacts, water main and service breaks are extremely weather dependent. Even in a mild winter like that last year, we still had some. But a winter of 13-14 was a very, very cold winter, and I think that was kind of our record number of service breaks that we had to deal with. So it is very dependent on weather. Influent water quality from Lake Winnebago really has a very significant impact on our chemical usage to treat the water, but also our sanitary sewer services, because everything we take out of the water gets sent down the sanitary sewer and gets treated at the wastewater treatment plant. So I know Brad and his staff are constantly monitoring what's coming in from the lake and tweaking the processes. And again, we really continue to see a lot of regulatory changes that require a lot of additional work on our part. Both the state and federal government continue to tighten the lead service line replacement requirements, and we keep reviewing all of the new information we get from them to try to figure out how we can continue helping our residents get those lead services replaced. With that, are there any questions from a water utility side?
With the lead service line replacement program, are we close to goal or at goal with the number of lines we wanted to replace this year in the community?
This year, we are nowhere near the goal. With the lack of funding, there has been
the delay in getting the funding.
Yes, it's the delay. We actually, it was just in a newsletter article this past week, about getting the paperwork out and being available for the public after we were finally getting through the process of what the new regulations and requirements are for being notified. Just in time to be, the applications for next year are due this week. So hopefully we'll be starting to get a lot done, but as far as the number done this year, no.
Then in terms of public interest, when when we go to some of these community events, how is the reception for it? Are people interested, or are they confused? What's kind of the overall feedback that we get from the public on this?
Most of the ones that will approach are folks that are working in, and Cheryl's folks are there as well. They have the knowledge for the inspection services, that portion of it, so we try to piggyback with them. But the folks that do approach, utility staff are very interested in it. They're very excited about it. One of the benefits has been kind of having these frequently asked question, talking points developed ahead of time. Their big question is funding.
We do run into a number of them that are either on the fringe or as part of the projects where work is being done on the lateral, whereas people are still resistant to having them replaced, even with the ordinance requirement being in there. But try to work through with them.
I think as more awareness spreads on this topic, or at least on the program, the initial rollout may be kind of slow, but once it takes off, has the potential. I mean, when you think about, the road construction projects we're doing are in some of the lower, the lowest income areas of our community, as well as, they haven't been touched in years. Once they realize that they have an out, instead of having to, themselves put out $3,000-$5,000 for a lead service line replacement, that they have the ability to. Nobody wants to take out a loan, and nobody wants to take one out from the city, but it's pretty low interest, and it can be paid off with 10 years.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, it's when you do that, it's going to help a lot of people. That's for sure.
One of the components of the new lead and copper rule is the frequency of lead testing with the residents. Previously, it was we were required to test 60 homes once every 3 years, and now we're required to sample at 60 homes once every 6 months. We struggled significantly trying to get 60 homes every 3 years, and because of the public information and outreach and Kane's work and the new utility website, we did a mailing this year, and instead of all the letters being ignored, we were turning people away by the dozens. I mean, the response was fantastic because of the outreach that we were able to do.
Nice.
And just a couple other things with that, as part of the new lead and copper rule revision, the city annually now has to send a notice to anyone that has an unknown or confirmed water service material in the city.
Confirmed lead?
Confirmed lead or an unknown. So that notice will be going out. We need to have that out by the middle of next month. So those will be going out soon as part of that. And there's also discussion at the federal level of a program to require all lead service lines be removed within 10 years, roughly from about 2027. So by 2037, all lead service lines would have to be removed. And that will be a daunting task given our current rate of.
We're currently around 7,000 unknown or confirmed lead, if I remember the database correctly.
I think it's closer to 7,000 confirmed lead on one side or the other, and about 9,000 if you throw in the unknown side.
So what is that letter gonna say?
To the individual property owners, some very specific federally regulated language that basically will say your material is, the city's records of your material is lead or unknown, and then a whole bunch of health impact language and other formal language that the EPA has dictated the letter contain.
But no call to action suggested?
I have to reread that information yet and try to figure out what that language is. Obviously, we'll add something in there about the program that we currently have and encourage people to get that out. We are waiting on approval yet for our application that was done this past June for funding. Again, with that, we did apply to try to get continue our current program where we can assist people at hopefully at the 50% level, and also did apply for some census tract funding. We have 3 census tracts in the city that, under the previous year's scoring, would qualify for up to 100% coverage of those lead service line replacements. There were more applicants this year for the program, for the pot of money. We don't know what we have, but hopefully it'll be even higher than 50% for those census tract areas, which with the lower income to have a greater assistance in those projects.
I appreciate the program getting off the ground. This is something that I've heard from residents frequently, wondering about their lead service lines. They know they may live in an older home. They know there may be lead. They're not sure they want a test done. So it's great that you guys are getting out there, and I appreciate the work that's gone into it so far.
And if people are curious what their service is, OshkoshWater.com, and you can schedule a free inspection for us to come out and identify what your surface material is.
Very good, thank you.
And with the public-facing service line material viewer, anybody can pull it up. It's active right now. You can click on your house and you can see what side, if we know it, what the public side is, what the private side is, if one's unknown, and then that would be able to drive if people need to have an inspection done.
And that's at OshkoshWater.com as well?
Yes.
Okay.
All right, any other questions there? If not, I think we're chewing into break a little bit, Mayor.
Yep. While we take a short one.
All right.
Stretch your legs. Maybe 10 minutes-ish.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Fill this.
Is that Jesse that works with you?
The Oshkosh Common Council is currently in a break. For a schedule of all GovTV programming, visit our website at oshkoshmedia.org. This is GovTV, opening accessibility and understanding of local government, helping you to be informed and involved. Also streaming live and on demand at oshkoshmedia.org and radio simulcast on Oshkosh FM 101.9. Like us on Facebook at our Oshkosh Media page. For a schedule of all GovTV programming, visit our website at oshkoshmedia.org. Please stay with us. Coverage will resume shortly. The Oshkosh Common Council is currently in a break. For a schedule of all GovTV programming, visit our website at oshkoshmedia.org. This is GovTV, opening accessibility and understanding of local government, helping you to be informed and involved. Also streaming live and on demand at oshkoshmedia.org and radio simulcast on Oshkosh FM 101.9. Like us on Facebook at our Oshkosh Media page. For a schedule of all GovTV programming, visit our website at oshkoshmedia.org. Please stay with us. Coverage will resume shortly. The Oshkosh Common Council is currently in a break. For a schedule of all GovTV programming, visit our website at oshkoshmedia.org. This is GovTV, opening accessibility and understanding of local government, helping you to be informed and involved. Also streaming live and on demand at oshkoshmedia.org and radio simulcast on Oshkosh FM 101.9. Like us on Facebook at our Oshkosh Media page. For a schedule of all GovTV programming, visit our website at oshkoshmedia.org. Please stay with us. Coverage will resume shortly. The Oshkosh Common Council is currently in a break. For a schedule of all GovTV programming, visit our website at oshkoshmedia.org. This is GovTV, opening accessibility and understanding of local government, helping you to be informed and involved. Also streaming live and on demand at oshkoshmedia.org and radio simulcast on Oshkosh FM 101.9. Like us on Facebook at our Oshkosh Media page. For a schedule of all GovTV programming, visit our website at oshkoshmedia.org. Please stay with us. Coverage will resume shortly. The Oshkosh Common Council is currently in a break. For a schedule of all GovTV programming, visit our website at oshkoshmedia.org. This is GovTV, opening accessibility and understanding of local government, helping you to be informed and involved. Also streaming live and on demand at oshkoshmedia.org and radio simulcast on Oshkosh FM 101.9. Like us on Facebook at our Oshkosh Media page. For a schedule of all GovTV programming, visit our website at oshkoshmedia.org. Please stay with us. Coverage will resume shortly. The Oshkosh Common Council is currently in a break. For a schedule of all GovTV programming, visit our website at oshkoshmedia.org. This is GovTV, opening accessibility and understanding of local government, helping you to be informed and involved. Also streaming live and on demand at oshkoshmedia.org and radio simulcast on Oshkosh FM 101.9. Like us on Facebook at our Oshkosh Media page. For a schedule of all GovTV programming, visit our website at oshkoshmedia.org. Please stay with us. Coverage will resume shortly. The Oshkosh Common Council is currently in a break. For a schedule of all GovTV programming, visit our website at oshkoshmedia.org. This is GovTV, opening accessibility and understanding of local government, helping you to be informed and involved. Also streaming live and on demand at oshkoshmedia.org and radio simulcast on Oshkosh FM 101.9. Like us on Facebook at our Oshkosh Media page. For a schedule of all GovTV programming, visit our website at oshkoshmedia.org. Please stay with us. Coverage will resume shortly. The Oshkosh Common Council is currently in a break. For a schedule of all GovTV programming, visit our website at oshkoshmedia.org. This is GovTV, opening accessibility and understanding of local government, helping you to be informed and involved. Also streaming live and on demand at oshkoshmedia.org and radio simulcast on Oshkosh FM 101.9. Like us on Facebook at our Oshkosh Media page. For a schedule of all GovTV programming, visit our website at oshkoshmedia.org. Please stay with us. Coverage will resume shortly. The Oshkosh Common Council is currently in a break. For a schedule of all GovTV programming, visit our website at oshkoshmedia.org. This is GovTV, opening accessibility and understanding of local government, helping you to be informed and involved. Also streaming live and on demand at oshkoshmedia.org and radio simulcast on Oshkosh FM 101.9. Like us on Facebook at our Oshkosh Media page. For a schedule of all GovTV programming, visit our website at oshkoshmedia.org. Please stay with us. Coverage will resume shortly. The Oshkosh Common Council is currently in a break. For a schedule of all GovTV programming, visit our website at oshkoshmedia.org. This is GovTV, opening accessibility and understanding of local government, helping you to be informed and involved. Also streaming live and on demand at oshkoshmedia.org and radio simulcast on Oshkosh FM 101.9. Like us on Facebook at our Oshkosh Media page. For a schedule of all GovTV programming, visit our website at oshkoshmedia.org. Please stay with us. Coverage will resume shortly. The Oshkosh Common Council is currently in a break. For a schedule of all GovTV programming, visit our website at oshkoshmedia.org. This is GovTV, opening accessibility and understanding of local government, helping you to be informed and involved. Also streaming live and on demand at oshkoshmedia.org and radio simulcast on Oshkosh FM 101.9. Like us on Facebook at our Oshkosh Media page. For a schedule of all GovTV programming, visit our website at oshkoshmedia.org. Please stay with us. Coverage will resume shortly. The Oshkosh Common Council is currently in a break. For a schedule of all GovTV programming, visit our website at oshkoshmedia.org. This is GovTV, opening accessibility and understanding of local government, helping you to be informed and involved. Also streaming live and on demand at oshkoshmedia.org and radio simulcast on Oshkosh FM 101.9. Like us on Facebook at our Oshkosh Media page. For a schedule of all GovTV programming, visit our website at oshkoshmedia.org. Please stay with us. Coverage will resume shortly. The Oshkosh Common Council is currently in a break. For a schedule of all GovTV programming, visit our website at oshkoshmedia.org. This is GovTV, opening accessibility and understanding of local government, helping you to be informed and involved. Also streaming live and on demand at oshkoshmedia.org and radio simulcast on Oshkosh FM 101.9. Like us on Facebook at our Oshkosh Media page. For a schedule of all GovTV programming, visit our website at oshkoshmedia.org.
Sewer utilities services connect with our strategic plan in supporting economic development, improving, maintaining infrastructure, and strengthening our neighborhoods. Our primary mission here is to protect public health and safety by providing effective treatment of sanitary waste generated not only from the properties within the city's sewer service, from properties in the city's sewer service area. That area includes not only the city of Oshkosh, but also 6 sanitary districts surrounding us in the towns of Black Wolf, Algoma, and Oshkosh. Sewer utility continues to focus on reducing clear water inflow and infiltration into the sanitary sewer system. To date, these efforts have had a very significant positive impact on wet weather flows that are managed at the wastewater treatment plant. Spring rainfall events that used to cause flow rates into the plant in excess of 120 million gallons a day, now typically only peak around 60. So our efforts over the last 15 plus years have really been very impactful on the amount of clear water that gets into the sanitary sewer system. But that is not an effort that we can stop. We still have quite a number of sanitary sewers in our system that were installed in the 1800s. I believe we've still got somewhere between 20 and 30 miles of 1800s sanitary sewer that is still in service. As far as accomplishments, we have continued to participate in the Wisconsin State Lab of Hygiene COVID-19 wastewater study. Our facilities plan, that's a 2042 facilities plan, has been approved by the DNR now. Our new discharge permit, our WPDES permit, we applied for in 2023. We still have not seen a draft permit yet, even though permit coverage, I believe, has expired already. We just have to continue operating on our old permit until we get a new one. We have finally received correspondence from the DNR regarding use of the multi-discharger variance for phosphorus regulation. Tentatively, we are approved through the end of calendar year 2025. Or 2027, I'm sorry, 2027. But unfortunately, we have not received a draft of that permit yet. That is one item we'll have to work with finance to update the wastewater utility budget, is to make sure we get the cost of that multi-discharger variance into the operating budget. That is something that is not currently shown in the budget. Those numbers are different every year based on the amount of phosphorus that's in our wastewater discharge. Based on some calculations that Jason and his staff have been working on, we are estimating that 2025's cost will be around $350,000. We are currently out for requests for proposals for design engineering services related to the construction of the tertiary filtration treatment process. As you know, that is something that over the years has shown up in the CIP as phosphorus treatment. We are currently, as I said, out for requesting design services for that project. That system must be operational by the end of calendar year 2027, because that's when the multi-discharger variance we will no longer be covered under, so we have to get our phosphorus tertiary treatment operational by then. Something else that's excuse me, been on the council agenda a couple of times was we were conducting a phosphorus removal pilot study to evaluate the effectiveness of some different chemical compounds. Currently, the wastewater treatment plant uses ferric chloride to attach. The iron attaches to the phosphorus and ties it up and then can be settled out. Unfortunately, that ferric chloride is a hazardous chemical. It is also extremely corrosive. It is very difficult on equipment. Being a hazardous chemical, it also requires anything that's in its vicinity to be electrically related needs to be referred to as referred to. It's a classified or rated area, so it requires different construction methodology and different equipment, I guess is the best way to say it, that can withstand that. This current chemical that we are currently trying out is none of those things. It is not hazardous. It is not corrosive. It is not a danger as the ferric chloride is. It is, as a chemical, extremely much more expensive, but it gets dosed at a significantly lower rate. Our wastewater treatment plant manager, who unfortunately was unable to make it today, has been compiling some data for us. Generally speaking, it looks like we are going to be very near to a wash from a cost standpoint by going to this much more expensive chemical on a per unit basis, but because we use so much less of it, that also generates less solids waste that we have to dewater and then haul away to get land applied. So Kevin is still working on compiling that data for us, but as of right now, it looks like it will, at a minimum, be a wash, and also taking into account some of the additional maintenance we will not need to do on equipment. So this has been a very, very interesting and very insightful pilot study, and we're certainly extremely thankful for the opportunity that you've given us to test this material. It is something that has been evaluated in the past, but in the past the cost differential was just too much to really consider it. But in recent years, the cost of that chemical has come down while the cost of the ferric chloride has gone up. So they're kind of on opposite trajectories, so this was a good time to really take a good serious look at it. Some of the other budgetary impacts that we see on a regular basis, regulatory requirements just continue to go up on all of our utilities, really. We talked a little bit about the chemical costs with the ferric chloride, but that's not the only one. Liquid chlorine, which is used in disinfection for our waste stream, has more than quadrupled in cost in the last couple of years. We used to pay around $500 a ton, and now it's over $2,000 a ton. Is based on information that we're getting from the chemical industry professionals, we don't see those costs going back the other way at any time. So, we do continue to evaluate alternative treatment processes. As we just talked about, the phosphorus removal chemical. We've also been keeping an eye on the potential for switching over from chlorine disinfection to UV disinfection. So we continue to evaluate all of those options to reduce our overall operations cost while still providing safe and effective treatment of all the waste stream that we do get into the treatment plant. With that, I'll open it up for any questions.
In terms of the blockages that we had last winter in Lake Winnebago, are we anticipating more of the same this year, or is that largely resolved?
Are you referring to the water filtration plant intake blockage? No, our work that we did to flush that system out has cleared that issue. Brad, did they complete the ROV inspection of that line after they were done?
They did as much as they can with visibility and water clarity. It was, as far as what they could see, was much better.
Okay. So yes, that we were able to resolve that issue, and certainly with the things that we learned in that process, we're going to be looking at a little more regular maintenance activities to not get into a similar situation.
Okay. What about the backup lines? Are the backup lines cleared out? The backup intakes? Is that
That's a tough
separate
one
issue?
to address. I mean, the 24s they're there. They're just inadequate. They're old and they're failing. One has, an ice shove has taken one and significantly shortened it, but they are there. But in the long run, we are looking at alternatives for.
Yeah, we do have some capital projects to reestablish that safe backup.
Yeah, because I think that's probably where Jacob was going, because the main line's fine.
Yeah.
It's just the backups. That's the challenge.
Right. Okay. Anything else? All right. Well, we'll move on to stormwater utility. So with that, I guess Jason, Brad, Cheryl, thank you.
Thank you very much.
The stormwater utility starts on page 363 of your book. And I neglected to say it earlier, but I want to say thank you to Denise for getting me copies of this that have your page numbers on it, so I could effectively tell you where we're headed in the book.
You're welcome.
I don't need the full book, but Denise was able to give me copies that actually have your page numbers on it. So thank you, Denise. All right, switching over to stormwater utility. Justin is joining us from engineering division. I think everybody knows Justin. He's been here for a few years now. All right, stormwater utility services tie to primarily the improve and maintain our infrastructure section of the strategic plan. Our primary mission here is to reduce flooding and manage stormwater runoff from throughout the city. The stormwater utility is generally responsible for ensuring that the city complies with the requirements of the Wisconsin Department of Natural Resources municipal separate storm sewer system permit. That permit is actually, it's managed through the DNR, but it's authorized as a part of the federal Clean Water Fund, or Clean Water Act. Thank you, Steve. Thank you. Wow. Some of the key things that accomplishments from this year, once again, designing, completing. Is construction complete on the mini storm, or are they just wrapping up yet, Justin?
Just wrapping up.
So almost complete on the storm lateral and mini storm program. Continuing construction on the Sawyer Creek Watershed Rural 2 Detention Basin. Based on progress, we hopefully at this time next year we'll be saying we've just completed the project. That is a project that started last fall, continued all throughout this summer, and will continue all through next summer. The next phase of the Stringham Watershed box culvert, certainly as council is aware, there are some groundwater things that we are continuing to look in on that, but certainly the main conveyance system for that box culvert is coming from South Park, kind of zigzags through and comes out at the Iowa, out to the Fox River. Certainly over the past several years, this watershed has been one that we've gotten a lot of challenges and some complaints. I know 9th Avenue just west of Ohio Street in the last few years has experienced some flooding issues. This main trunk storm sewer system, as we continue to extend that upstream towards South Park, will give us the capacity to then be able to branch out and pick up some of those other areas and continue to help reduce that flooding in those areas. Really, the biggest budgetary impact from the stormwater utility is compliance with the approved Upper Fox and Wolf River Basin TMDL for not only phosphorus, but also total suspended solids. That impact is going to continue to be seen by the stormwater utility for many, many years. The compliance schedule for the phosphorus side of that will likely, if DNR continues to hold on those permits, it will be 10 permit terms to achieve full compliance, which is 50 years, because each permit is 5 years. So each permit, they're expecting to see a certain level of improvement over the past permit. So full compliance with that, if they continue how they've managed other TMDLs, will be 10 permit terms. With that, are there any questions on the stormwater utility? All right, seeing none there, we will move on to engineering division. Toward the front of your books on page 105. Everybody a moment to get there. Engineering division services connect to our strategic plan through improving and maintaining infrastructure, supporting economic development, and improving our quality of life. Really, these include the division's primary responsibility to manage construction projects. This division is responsible for a survey, design, and inspection of our annual street reconstruction program, annual asphalt overlay program, sanitary sewer, water main, and storm sewer design, as well as the coordination of long-range planning documents related to the water, sewer, and stormwater utilities. Engineering division assists several other departments in planning and managing construction projects. The engineering division continues to assist parks with projects, providing design and construction services for the transportation department, primarily related to the parking lot reconstruction program, and continue to support community development by assisting developers and helping to manage city construction projects. Some key accomplishments for this year: the division designed, bid, and managed approximately $40 million worth of construction this year. As I've talked to several of our consultants, that is more than some of the smaller engineering consulting firms in the valley manage. So the division is very, very active in our construction projects. Completing the reconstruction of Wagoo Avenue from Main to Mill, Cherry Street from Lincoln to New York, Grand from Parkway to Irving, East 7th from South Main to the eastern end, and 7th, Iowa, Michigan, 5th area as well. One of the other big accomplishments that we've really spent a lot of time with is our second year of the asphalt preservation program. This program utilized ARPA funding to do a lot of a little bit longer term preventative maintenance to our asphalt streets, a lot of sealing, chip sealing, just a lot of things that we don't have the funding or the ability to manage through street division. We've been able to take advantage of the ARPA funding the last 2 years to get two very large projects done. Justin, do you recall about how many miles of street we're able to touch?
No, this year was pretty big. I think I'm just really guessing if I throw out a number. I don't know how many miles, but they're both very large projects.
Yeah, and this year's project actually, we thought we were estimated pretty good last year, and when the bids came in, we were quite a bit under last year's budget, so we expanded the project a lot more this year, and again, almost came in under what was allocated. So just the increase in the scope that we had this year actually really drove down the pricing because of, being able to overcome the mobilization and some of those fixed costs associated with the project. Finally, we're able to complete the reconstruction of Pratt Trail in Menominee Park. I know that certainly was a topic of conversation for a very long period of time, but that part of that project is done, and I know Ray's got a few other projects in that area he wants us to start working on. And as I mentioned, several other water, sewer, and paving projects. The Nicolay Ave asphalt project, we've got some water main and sewer projects. All those are managed through the engineering division. Some of the challenges and budgetary impacts, we've had a very hard time filling vacant engineer positions. Staff have worked with human resources and actually retained the services of 2 recruiting agencies to try to help us fill engineering positions, and we still haven't had any luck with those agencies. Finally, after almost 2 years, Justin had 1 new engineer start last week. That was a vacancy that was over 2 years ago, I believe. We had another vacancy this spring, and we still haven't been able to fill that one. Like I said, even with using recruiting agencies, it's been very difficult to fill those positions. And also, the state of Wisconsin does require us to update our PACER rating on all of our streets on a biannual basis. Next year is the next update, so there is certainly some costs associated with that to have somebody come in and do that work for us, but that is an every other year cost, and it's on the odd years.
Do you have any, do you know why it's been so hard to fill engineers? I know workforce is a hard issue throughout, but 2 years is quite a bit of time.
There's a lot of factors that go into that. I think some of the biggest factors, as I look back over the last 25 to 30 years, there was a time, in the mid-90s, coming out of college, civil engineers, there were a lot more people coming out of college than there were jobs.
Sure.
So, more people, fewer, than jobs, that drives down salaries. Then that causes people who are looking at engineering to go, well, why would I go that avenue when I can go mechanical, industrial, electrical, and, at that time make 2 times or more the salary. Fast forward 10 years to the housing crash of, the late 2000s. Again, no demand because the private development side of the business just was not there. So you've got, a decade of dwindling demand because, the pay for the jobs wasn't there. Then another decade of dwindling demand because the jobs weren't there. It really is a factor of there weren't a lot of students going into the civil and municipal engineering field for a very long time.
Sure.
That certainly is turning around. I know Justin and some of his staff have been going to some of the career fairs. We have also been communicating with some of the engineering colleges. Justin and I were on a conference call with UW-Platteville earlier this year. I also serve on the advisory board for the UW-Oshkosh engineering program. Unfortunately, they do not have a civil program yet. They were about to get started when the professor that was slated to teach those courses left the university. So they don't have anybody to teach that program yet, but that is something that we're continuing to work with those programs to try to get some interest and pull some people in. We do bring in summer help in the engineering division every year, trying to drive some of that interest so we can bring in some staff that way. But as even in talking with all of our consultants, if you're out there looking for somebody with that 10 years of experience, Mark, to really be able to step in and do projects all on their own without a lot of help or training, those people that want new jobs, they can command almost anything they want because there are so few of them out there.
And I thank you for the explanation. I also wanted to make the point because I think we often get into our limiting factors, often thought of as money at times, and now we're getting into a world where we have 2 limiting factors, money and personnel. So I think we're dealing with thank you for doing the work you guys do with limited staff. So thanks for that explanation.
Yeah, I've always theorized that because we are having a similar problem right now with finance people. Finding good finance people, it takes a long time. And I think part of it is those 2 skill sets have both public and private applicability. Engineers can go with the public sector, private sector, finance people, public sector, private sector, and to talk to our colleagues, those are the two areas that are probably the hardest. So I think it's everything James just said, plus they can take two different routes in their careers, and I think that creates another challenge.
Sure.
I think it's hard finding good council members too, so. Just a little joke there.
I was
Talk
going
about
to
Chris
say,
or anything.
Quiet ball.
Any other questions regarding engineering? All right, we'll move to administration then, page 102, so just in front of engineering division. As far as connections to the strategic plan, improving, maintaining infrastructure, supporting economic development, strengthening neighborhoods, enhancing quality of life services. There's, the administration division, while very small, really touches everything else that's in the department. We support the entire rest of the department and all of our interdepartmental contacts. We regular contact, especially with economic development. Continuing to implement our departmental strategic communications plan. A couple of years ago, I was before council and was pleased to tell you we had launched a Facebook page, and I think Carly, at the time you were up there and you found the wrong one the first time, I believe. So certainly I don't think we're having that issue anymore. Our page has been very regularly updated with information, and really coordinating that through our communications consultant with Oshkosh Media and Andy Radig's support and help as well. Also continuing our supervisory and management training. It is something that as a department I put a lot of focus on, really starting about 4 years ago. We have a lot of very technically skilled individuals, but our technical education does not prepare us to be successful leaders and managers. So we've spent a lot of time and effort really bringing in some training opportunities, working with human resources. Both Courtney and Michelle spend a lot of time working with us on our organizational development and really bringing up our new supervisors and leaders. As far as budgetary impacts, really not a lot of, nothing real exciting to note. As you look at the staffing, it's a portion of me, a portion of Steve, and then our administrative assistant. That's all that resides in this division. Any questions there? If not, we will move on to the special fund on page 230 of your book. Excuse me. The Public Works Special Fund is utilized to assist property owners with their reimbursements through the private side lead service replacement program, as well as currently the work and right-of-way permit technician resides in this position, or in this fund. When that position was created and approved by council, it was indicated that that position would reside split in the utilities. For whatever reason, when it was implemented, the assistant finance director at the time wanted to put it here. We are moving it back to the way it was originally presented to council this year. So that will be an update that you see in future versions of the budget. It's just getting it corrected to the way it was originally presented to council. As far as the money expended to account for the private side lead service replacements, that's offset through reimbursements through the DNR Safe Drinking Water Loan Program, and now with the loan programs in this year's from the residents as well. So that ends up being a wash. To date, we have assisted approximately 700 property owners in replacing their private side lead services. In the last week or so, I think as Steve mentioned, we're talking about water utility. We've just started sending out more information. There were outreach materials sent to another 260 properties. So if we can get all of those, that would be again a significant increase in the number of properties that we've been able to help replace their services. As we talked about with the water utility, it was just recent that we got all the paperwork on the Safe Drinking Water Loan Program. There were a lot of rule changes, and that's something that both Steve and Maria have been working with the contractors and homeowners to try to educate them on all of the changes. Certainly there's a big impact with the plumbers and the contractors working on it, so I know there have been several, or one or two at least, training sessions with those contractors to help them understand the changes in the program. As Steve mentioned, we are currently looking at the 2025 opportunities for funding, and the intents to apply are due October 31st, so this week. As far as some of the budgetary impacts, the LSR, the lead service line replacement program, is really dependent on property owners taking advantage of the program to get their services replaced. The more people that choose to participate, the more the costs are going to go up, but also the more the reimbursements are, because they do offset each other. The current funding is utilizing bipartisan infrastructure law funding. Like I said, we're continuing to monitor any changes to that program and going to continue applying for as long as we can to get that money to offset those costs. Any questions?
That's 50% right now, right? And then we had for the lead service lateral replacement, and then it has like a caveat for low-income people. Is that still how it functions?
The low-income portion is actually funded through the CDBG program through community development. So
that was a change this year.
Under the new program, we can no longer have anything other than the.
They all have to be the same.
The 50%. For the program we've applied for, and are hopefully going to be finding out information soon. We actually are also doing the census tract version, which may give some people in those qualified census tracts additional help.
Okay, but right now it's just we pay for
50% up to $2,700.
Okay, sure.
Or the CDBG if you qualify as the very low income.
Okay.
Any other questions? If not, that looks to be the end of my notes.
So,
CIP, anything?
CIP, obviously, the majority of our CIP budget is housed in James's areas. This is an appropriate time between now and, I think, we go
to 11:30.
So we've got a good little chunk here, but if you've got questions on projects or funding sources for projects, it'd be a great time while him and the senior leadership are here.
I think one of the things, certainly as we talked about during one of the CIP workshops, I know the Fernald Avenue extension from Vinland to Jackson is something that's was in the plan. Funding was not approved for 2024. We do have that back in the plan. I know, as Kelly has indicated, there are certainly a lot of progress going on in that area. Certainly, staff has identified funding from other projects that have come in under budget that we would certainly like to utilize to fund that project and get it completed. It does currently show up in the CIP as, I believe, to be determined funding, but I just wanted to refresh the conversation that we had during one of the workshops that we have identified funding from other projects that did come in under budget that we could fund that project in that way. And if there's any questions on any of the other projects that we've got going on, I know Justin's team has certainly been working a lot on design, and the first one of next year's project is actually out for bid already.
Bid opening's actually next week, and the second project's be out on the streets tomorrow.
So the Fernald Ave one, there's a couple small parts, right? We had a institutional potential usage over on Vinland, right? And then
Yes.
we have manufacturing interests as well.
Yes.
And because I was seeing within the budget, there's some special assessments, there's some sidewalk built into that too. Just in terms of trying to lower the cost of it. Sidewalks in that space. Is it still, we're on the verge of industrial park area. Some of our industrial parks have it, some have it, don't have sidewalks. We've had this discussion before in the past, and and I don't know overall budget what that number is in that project, but is that something to look at to try to reduce the cost? Is it is it something where pedestrians are actually gonna use it, or is it just gonna be another another maintenance cost on the property owners?
I know as we've installed, installed sidewalks in the North Industrial Park, a lot of that did initiate with requests from some of those industries because their staff want to go for a walk at break or at lunch, and, there wasn't a safe way to do it, so, that's what had initially driven a lot of the installation in that North Industrial Park. This isn't, a part of the North Industrial Park, but it is immediately adjacent.
Just something to consider. Not giving direction, not even attempting to give direction, but just asking the questions of, when push comes to shove and every dollar is important and we're trying to find it, is there a space to reduce the cost of that project?
One thing I'll just quick add to that is, the industrial park certainly, with the institutional that has bought that land down and owns it, they've kind of made comments in our conversations about how to get connectivity on Vinland to the other school that's up there just north of the site. So, while I can't guarantee the sidewalk will get used, I think with what the use that is planned to go there would be, I think it's a strong likelihood, and that connection on Vinland, I think, is a strong desire from a lot of avenues. It's going to be challenging as with the areas that are in the town, but I think certainly there's a desire to have it be connected to the system.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Question I have about private roads. One of the items that came up a couple of weeks ago was about Cope Avenue up on Jackson near the county jail. For other private roads in the city, I know Cope is kind of a very specific and unique case. Is there a policy that Public Works has internally or that council has approved in the past with regards to how we address those in terms of resurfacing? I know that the residents there, potentially if a resident wants a private road resurfaced, and then we would bill them for that. Do we have an in-house policy for that, or is it kind of a case-by-case basis?
In the case of Cope Avenue, those residents did end up getting together and doing work on their own rather than having us do it for them. Certainly as a private road, we do not maintain those areas.
Right.
Certainly in working with community development, because of the challenges that we've seen with Cope Avenue in particular over the years, that's a big reason why we don't do them anymore.
Right.
If a development's coming in, it's getting dedicated as a public street, so we can take care of it and make sure we don't have those types of issues like we had at Cope Avenue.
How many other private roads in the city are there?
There are a few. I know there's one off in West New York by the church at Algoma, Goss Court. Certainly the mobile home parks all have private roads. That's kind of the other one that really comes to mind.
There's a fair amount.
Condos off of Havenwood.
Yeah, I figured there's probably
Development on 20th.
20th's got one. They've got stuff down, off of Fond du Lac.
We now have protections that they get done as part of the whole plat, and that was not done with Cope.
Right.
And that was the real.
So that is the policy.
Yeah, we've from Cope Avenue we've put in additional protection. So these roads you hear about, Goss Court actually dates back to the 1930s, but when we did New York, was it New York that we did it?
We did New York Avenue, and actually the property owner that lives at the end of it is the one who ended up pulling all the permits to get that street paved. We didn't end up doing that either. Initially, we had put a plan together and we were going to, but then the property owner took care of it.
Yeah, but I think we've learned our lessons from those, because Cope Avenue continues to be a challenge, and eventually, we would like to see it built to city standards with dedicated right of way, so that it's a public road, and then we accept full responsibility for it. But it would be unfair to everybody else to essentially maintain a private road when, if you look at streets as sort of a club membership, everybody else is paid. When you buy your house, you've bought into the infrastructure that's there in your street. On Cope Avenue, they haven't done it. A few years ago, there were some folks over off of Havenwood that were asking about, well, can't you guys maintain some of the private water mains in there? And it's like they weren't built to city standards, and then it's, at what point do we say, well, we're going to just overlook the fact that you didn't build it to city standards? It's like, the developer at the time did things to keep it private, and then we accepted it and all the imperfections that go with it. So we can't, you can't increase the right-of-way anymore. If these were public roads, there'd be no setbacks. I mean, there's all these things that, we try to discourage the private roads unless they can do things. And even today, with some of the private roads, I think we're asking that they still get built to standards just in case they want to flip it on us.
Well, even, I'll use the development on 20th as an example. So that one connects into the trail system behind Traeger School, the Rouge Park Trail System. You have residents in there who are unhappy that, residents in the condo association area that are unhappy that other people are walking into their neighborhood and using their street and sidewalk, because that is their street and their sidewalk, not the public street and public sidewalk. It actually creates neighbor issues by even continuing doing this process, but by doing it, it helps reduce the cost of the development. So there's a positive on the front side, but there's a negative somewhere down that line, just a matter of when it hits us.
James, going back to Furnow with the mayor's questions, are we in a position to kind of show a tentative funding source for this so that the council can see that?
Yeah, certainly Justin and I have worked on that. We can get that distributed.
Because right now it's still TBD, and one of the things that, I'm torn on the to be determined, because then it's like, well, it's in the CIP. Yeah, with, when donkeys fly type of thing. It's like, we got to make sure that we have the funding source.
We can have a discussion yet, maybe by end of day tomorrow. Are you able to forward that over to her?
Sure.
The finance, thank you.
I have one thing for capital improvement. So I don't know what the way to get this on everyone's radar. We had a grand meeting last week. They're had some issues with the soil underneath, and they went kind of a reimagining session for how that the Grand Opera House looks. They're looking to try to increase that budget. Is that something that
would be appropriate to spare Mr. Robbie of that, since that's not his department? That Mr. Fitzpatrick, I believe, is in the back. He's aware of it, and we're prepared to talk about it when we do admin services tomorrow. So
sounds good.
That'd be a great time.
Make sure it's on our radar.
That's really important that we bring that one up. All right, you guys owe me one. I spared you that.
The only other question I have, I don't have actually too much on the details. I just want feedback. This is the first, well, we've only been doing it for a few months, but collecting on the vehicle registration fee and using that as an offset to special assessments. Obviously, you've got some things spelled out in the budget a little bit on how you're using those funds. Currently okay with the current rate for a little while on that, on the VRF, as well as being able to maintain a balance in there to fund the streets and fund the programs you want to fund?
Yeah, certainly Julie and I have been talking about that and taking a look at that as we're preparing the CIP, so that what's being shown as funded through that replacement program is not exceeding what the anticipated revenues are.
And then just into the future, for whenever this whole council's gone at some point in the future, the idea had been that if that's going to readjust, it should readjust on the annual. So we started collecting in June. The timing of any of those changes, when and if there's a change, it wouldn't be a full year potential change. That we try to do that mid-year. So just taking that into account as you guys keep going forward, that you're looking actually not too short term. You got to look farther out before you make that change. Okay. For that recommendation. Thank you.
I'm still thinking about the sidewalks on Furnow. Is there? Can you do half? I don't know. What's the cost savings?
And I don't know that. That's what. And correct. And can it be a one-side street? That type of stuff. I don't have too many regrets as a council member on votes I've ever made, but 2 of them are on sidewalk installations, and one of them happened to be on the North Industrial Park. And I know James disagrees with me on this, and we're cool with why we disagree, but one of them was on that North Industrial Park, and how much we put in out there, in my opinion. That's one of my 2 or 3 vote regrets of 7 years. it's a value thing, you know, what,
Sure.
but that's all it really comes down to. But just looking at the project, I know it's important to you guys, but also trying to find, you know, how much can we squeeze to get it done too. So being realistic.
Understand.
So that's all. If there's nothing else for Public Works, like I said, they're a big part of our budget, so you got a few minutes if you want it. Otherwise, we can release them and move on to the next.
Take a few minutes if Lynn's here.
Is Lynn up, or can we reach out?
Oh, Lynn can.
Usually I know staff is
She's
sometimes
probably watching.
listening or watching.
Yeah, and since she's only one phone away, I'll have Cammy give her a call.
I was just gonna email her.
Otherwise, short break for council, maybe 5 minutes or so while we wait for, to stretch your legs a little bit.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
The Oshkosh Common Council is currently in a break. For a schedule of all GovTV programming, visit our website at oshkoshmedia.org. This is GovTV, opening accessibility and understanding of local government, helping you to be informed and involved. Also streaming live and on demand at oshkoshmedia.org and radio simulcast on Oshkosh FM 101.9. Like us on Facebook at our Oshkosh Media page. For a schedule of all GovTV programming, visit our website at oshkoshmedia.org. Please stay with us. Coverage will resume shortly. The Oshkosh Common Council is currently in a break. For a schedule of all GovTV programming, visit our website at oshkoshmedia.org. This is GovTV, opening accessibility and understanding of local government, helping you to be informed and involved. Also streaming live and on demand at oshkoshmedia.org and radio simulcast on Oshkosh FM 101.9. Like us on Facebook at our Oshkosh Media page. For a schedule of all GovTV programming, visit our website at oshkoshmedia.org. Please stay with us. Coverage will resume shortly. The Oshkosh Common Council is currently in a break. For a schedule of all GovTV programming, visit our website at oshkoshmedia.org. This is GovTV, opening accessibility and understanding of local government, helping you to be informed and involved. Also streaming live and on demand at oshkoshmedia.org and radio simulcast on Oshkosh FM 101.9. Like us on Facebook at our Oshkosh Media page. For a schedule of all GovTV programming, visit our website at oshkoshmedia.org. Please stay with us. Coverage will resume shortly. The Oshkosh Common Council is currently in a break. For a schedule of all GovTV programming, visit our website at oshkoshmedia.org. This is GovTV, opening accessibility and understanding of local government, helping you to be informed and involved. Also streaming live and on demand at oshkoshmedia.org and radio simulcast on Oshkosh FM 101.9. Like us on Facebook at our Oshkosh Media page. For a schedule of all GovTV programming, visit our website at oshkoshmedia.org. Please stay with us. Coverage will resume shortly. The Oshkosh Common Council is currently in a break. For a schedule of all GovTV programming, visit our website at oshkoshmedia.org. This is GovTV, opening accessibility and understanding of local government, helping you to be informed and involved. Also streaming live and on demand at oshkoshmedia.org and radio simulcast on Oshkosh FM 101.9. Like us on Facebook at our Oshkosh Media page. For a schedule of all GovTV programming, visit our website at oshkoshmedia.org. Please stay with us. Coverage will resume shortly. The Oshkosh Common Council is currently in a break. For a schedule of all GovTV programming, visit our website at oshkoshmedia.org. This is GovTV, opening accessibility and understanding of local government, helping you to be informed and involved. Also streaming live and on demand at oshkoshmedia.org and radio simulcast on Oshkosh FM 101.9. Like us on Facebook at our Oshkosh Media page. For a schedule of all GovTV programming, visit our website at oshkoshmedia.org. Please stay with us. Coverage will resume shortly. The Oshkosh Common Council is currently in a break. For a schedule of all GovTV programming, visit our website at oshkoshmedia.org. This is GovTV, opening accessibility and understanding of local government, helping you to be informed and involved. Also streaming live and on demand at oshkoshmedia.org and radio simulcast on Oshkosh FM 101.9. Like us on Facebook at our Oshkosh Media page. For a schedule of all GovTV programming, visit our website at oshkoshmedia.org. Please stay with us. Coverage will resume shortly. The Oshkosh Common Council is currently in a break. For a schedule of all GovTV programming, visit our website at oshkoshmedia.org. This is GovTV, opening accessibility and understanding of local government, helping you to be informed and involved. Also streaming live and on demand at oshkoshmedia.org and radio simulcast on Oshkosh FM 101.9. Like us on Facebook at our Oshkosh Media page. For a schedule of all GovTV programming, visit our website at oshkoshmedia.org. Please stay with us. Coverage will resume shortly. The Oshkosh Common Council is currently in a break. For a schedule of all GovTV programming, visit our website at oshkoshmedia.org. This is GovTV, opening accessibility and understanding of local government, helping you to be informed and involved. Also streaming live and on demand at oshkoshmedia.org and radio simulcast on Oshkosh FM 101.9. Like us on Facebook at our Oshkosh Media page. For a schedule of all GovTV programming, visit our website at oshkoshmedia.org. Please stay with us. Coverage will resume shortly. The Oshkosh Common Council is currently in a break. For a schedule of all GovTV programming, visit our website at oshkoshmedia.org. This is GovTV, opening accessibility and understanding of local government, helping you to be informed and involved. Also streaming live and on demand at oshkoshmedia.org and radio simulcast on Oshkosh FM 101.9. Like us on Facebook at our Oshkosh Media page. For a schedule of all GovTV programming, visit our website at oshkoshmedia.org. Please stay with us. Coverage will resume shortly. The Oshkosh Common Council is currently in a break. For a schedule of all GovTV programming, visit our website at oshkoshmedia.org. This is GovTV, opening accessibility and understanding of local government, helping you to be informed and involved. Also streaming live and on demand at oshkoshmedia.org and radio simulcast on Oshkosh FM 101.9. Like us on Facebook at our Oshkosh Media page. For a schedule of all GovTV programming, visit our website at oshkoshmedia.org. Please stay with us. Coverage will resume shortly. The Oshkosh Common Council is currently in a break. For a schedule of all GovTV programming, visit our website at oshkoshmedia.org. This is GovTV, opening accessibility and understanding of local government, helping you to be informed and involved. Also streaming live and on demand at oshkoshmedia.org and radio simulcast on Oshkosh FM 101.9. Like us on Facebook at our Oshkosh Media page. For a schedule of all GovTV programming, visit our website at oshkoshmedia.org. Please stay with us. Coverage will resume shortly.
He did, all right.
Right
So
ahead.
he went from one of the biggest or the biggest department to the little. The city attorney's office is a small department. We have 3 attorneys and a paralegal. 45. But we support all the other departments and functions of the city. I was going to start with our 2024 goals. We listed helping Public Works with various projects, including one of the big ones is the master agreement with the sanitary districts. I did provide an update on that a couple of weeks ago, and it was less encouraging. I have a little bit more encouraging information since that time. I've had some discussions with the mediator, and at his urging, we brought in another technical advisor for him, and he is taking kind of another run at the parties to try to get us all speaking the same language. So, knowing we are still working on that and actively pursuing getting an agreement, we are also still pursuing some other options, as I noted in that confidential memo. So, our second goal was related to training. Last year we proposed and then we followed through and tried to change our focus from trying to get in-person training, with which everybody's schedules being what they are and everybody being busy. We tried to move to kind of a module, on-demand type of training. We completed modules on open meetings, public records, and ethics for all the board and commission members. We've gotten some good feedback on that. We prepare the slides and the scripts, and Media Services graciously jumps in and voiceovers and puts it all together to make us look much more professional than if I had to do that final part. I can write the stuff, but the Media Services gets a big thank you from our office for putting it together and making us look a little better with that. We have a couple more of those ready to go that are just waiting for Media Services to have the time to put those together, and then we plan to continue that type of training moving forward. Our third goal was to take substantive steps toward rebalancing the workload and adjusting responsibilities in our office to maximize the attorney time. We're preparing for eventual staff changeover. Sorry. My allergies are still horrible, so I have a little bit of a scratchy throat this morning yet. We're trying to maximize attorney time and then prepare for that eventual staff turnover in our office. Not naming anyone in particular.
Let's talk about that for a minute.
Excuse me. Last year, we had a budget enhancement request for a paralegal that did not make it through the budget. But we were able to, excuse me, sorry, update our office assistant. And she had some paralegal training. She completed her paralegal certification through the state bar. We upgraded that position, which allowed us to shift some of the particularly prosecution-related work over to that paralegal. She's prepping case files. She's doing a little more of that work, which frees up Attorney Vandenhogen's time. The other thing we were able to do is an attorney who recently retired. We hired him on as a part-time employee, and he is helping out with some of the prosecution work, again, freeing up some of Attorney Vandenhogen's time so that we'll able to use her a little more efficiently and on higher level projects. Excuse me. Some of the highlights, we of course do all the prosecution. Excuse me, good God, I've been fine all morning. We do about, I want to say a little over 6,000 cases for prosecution during the year. About 700 maybe-ish pre-trials. A lot less of those go to trial, so about 25 to 30 trials per year. We also do other types of enforcement actions, including enforcement of easement rights for the city, nuisance cases. We had a vicious animal case that went to trial this year, a drug house abatement. So those are all also enforcement types of actions that we do in-house. We work with outside insurance counsel on defensive claims against the city and on outside counsel with certain other types of cases. We had some condemnation matters for the Grand Opera House, or no, sorry, not the Grand Opera House, the Transit Center. We had a condemnation case to expand that property to build the new transit center. Worked with them. Rural 2 detention basin. We had to acquire some property, and so we worked on those we have some outside counsel, but then we also do some of the work in-house for those. So we do a lot. I mean, you guys are familiar, so I won't go into details about it. We do a lot of the resolutions and the ordinances that you guys see at your council meetings. Some of the notable ones this year, the election ward updates that had to be done. We were able to work with the state to actually combine and simplify some of our existing wards and make that a little bit easier for election administration. We assist planning with all of their ordinance updates, so we're working on the subdivision code with them. worked on some signage issues, some mural ordinance updates. We recodified and organized a number of chapters, including some of the stuff that related to finance, and our permits and those types of things. We worked with Public Works on all the lead service lines, the ordinance, the policy, the documents they need to support that policy, the loan agreements, the mortgage agreements. We drafted all of those. So there are lots of others, but you see those. So any of those that you see typically would go through our office for at least review, if not all the drafting. We review and draft various agreements for the city, a lot of development agreements this year, anything with a TIF or a TIF amendment, the other projects through community development, the Washington School project, the Farmington development agreements, the RDA project areas between 8th and 9th east of Oregon, and the corridor project up on North Main, working on those development agreements. A few other highlights of things we're working on. We review all the city's bond issuances, and any private developer who comes through the city and asks for private industrial revenue bonds, we review all those. We worked with the Police and Fire Commission board. They had some hearings this past year. After those, we also updated their policy and worked with the board to get that more up to date and to address some of the issues that had arisen during those hearings, or things where people had misunderstandings, or the policy could be clearer than what it was. So we worked with them on that. We meet quarterly with OPD staff to talk about records issues and records requests, and we meet monthly with community development to review the status of any projects with them and to keep all their projects moving forward. I noted we provide support and guidance to all the other departments on anything imaginable. For some things that we are currently working on, we're reviewing and updating the city's liquor ordinances, and I'm going to look at Chris because I know you're interested in that. We're working on that right now to bring us up to speed with the changes that were made by the state in late winter, early spring this year. We're reviewing and drafting a formal policy for the Board of Review, for Board of Review hearings. That was at the board's request, that they wanted a more formal policy and something that we could put out to the public. So we're working on that. Keeping the clerk's office informed relative to election issues and concerns that have been coming up. And as I went through, I noticed my goals for next year are basically the same goals as this year. Continuing to do training. We're looking at doing a couple more training modules, actually directing a few of those at staff. We did the board and commission ones first, but we want to get some staff training on specific issues out. We're still working on the master agreement for sanitary districts and some of the other larger public works projects. And then still working on adjusting the responsibilities in our offices and succession planning. So other than substantively, I have very little change in my budget itself. So it's the typical increases.
Yeah, Julie, if you could just point out the moving of a part of Lynn's position and my position into the utilities, so that, because it looks like there's a reduction in the attorney's office, there's just a shifting of those costs.
Right. Previously in the fund balance, or in the budget, there was two individuals being budgeted in the special revenue or special assessment fund. We're no longer charging the special assessment, so we needed to move those individuals back into the general fund, which also caused me to look at some of the other departments that are not currently getting charged the utilities, that do a lot of utility work. So attorney's office was my first guinea pig. I asked Lynn to look at their time that they spend on water, sewer, and storm utilities to see if we can shift a portion of their salary and personnel budget out of the general fund and into those utilities that they serve. Thought process being, if they were their own entity, they would probably need an attorney, whether it was inside or outside, they would have attorney fees. I asked Lynn to be conservative because it was a first time thing, so.
For example, if I can jump in on that, the one thing with the sanitary master agreements, that's it's a lot of time and effort being put into that. It's also a very unusual thing. We normally would not spend that much time, so we kind of we completely discounted that time spent and said that's not typical, but we looked at other things we do for the utilities, like give advice on bankruptcies and file claims for bankruptcies, answer questions in regard to billing or changes in the statute. I know I'm missing things, but
anytime we're dealing with regulatory
Yeah.
issues with the DNR, you're looking
Yeah.
at stuff.
So we do spend, as we looked at it, some significant time for each utility, and then I provided that information to Julie and her staff, and I'll let you take it from there, because you worked your magic from there to figure out how to allocate it.
So yes, Lynn's office put together conservative estimates. Instead of allocating each individual like 2% or 5%, what we ended up doing was we each put Lynn's time. We did 10% of water, 10% of sewer, 10% of storm, based off of the spreadsheet analysis that she had given us. It equated to pretty much exactly what she had come up with for her department. It's just only one person's salary was allocated instead of all 5 of them or all 6 of them. But that was the biggest change for the personnel budget for the city attorney's office, is we're charging the utilities a portion based off of how much they use the attorney's office.
Do we have a dollar amount for it? Is that the $63,000, I'm guessing? Or is there a line item I'm missing somewhere? Or is it just by a shift in personnel?
It's just by a shift in personnel, so.
So it's not it would have been, I don't have last year in front of me, it wasn't 3.65, so that's the reduction?
So that 63, the change from the prior year to this year, that also, there's some other factors in there, so you
Okay.
can say it was slightly higher than that. It would have been closer to the 70,000. I can get you the exact number if you
That's
want,
fine.
but.
But we're showing it as a reduction in total personnel numbers or in dollars?
And personnel numbers.
So what was the reduction in the city manager?
Similar, yeah.
So
City manager?
0.35?
Well,
I don't know what it was last year.
but in attorneys, there's also a shift in health insurance. We budget based on what we think, who's gonna take the health plan, and one person in a small office like this, you change who's got the health plan and who's not, that can shift the numbers quite a bit. So
Yep.
it's not all Lynn getting farmed out to
Right.
the utilities. There's a little bit of tweak. And you'll see that, especially with the small departments, you'll really see that swing. One person can swing it quite a bit.
That's great. So roughly 70 in legal, is that what we're saying?
Right.
And
And then
guess on city manager?
City manager's office, we went back and forth on that one, Mark. So that is one that I kind of said that we want to keep that one as an option, but we did not put that one in the proposed budget.
Because I saw it, the reason
I know,
I
page
said,
42 has a typo.
no, I went to the utilities. The personnel had both Lynn and me.
Yeah, I think
10%.
those FTE sheets got.
They didn't get updated?
I don't think so.
Oh, okay, so I'm
So
not.
that is one that I was gonna discuss with council, and if they felt like we should make that change. We went ahead and made the change for city attorney. We were gonna discuss the city manager.
When we get there?
Okay.
And that's an operational dollar amount change in the general fund, correct? So an operational reduction in the general fund?
Yes.
And you said this is guinea pig, good word for it? We can do this more? We might do this more?
We already do that with some departments.
Okay.
It is not across the board from what I have seen.
But we might do it more.
We do it in finance. There are some departments that I have found that we should be doing it in, and that was my first example, and then we were gonna discuss the city manager
This is
example.
one of my questions for way later in day 2. This is something that every other, private industry does this and only this. That's how this works. That's how my budgets work. That's how every nonprofit I work on, and I know that we can't do all that, but if you say it's a pilot program, we'd love to see more of that. And reducing operationally what we see in the levy is very important. That's the topic of the day.
Part of this sometimes has to do with expenditure restraint.
Mm-hmm.
So if we need it, we move it, but we say, it's sort of saving these for a day when you really need it because of expenditure restraint. Your point is well taken though, because, should we do it? Short answer is yes.
Yeah, of
But
course.
sometimes if you move too much, then you're kind of hurting yourself with expenditure restraint. So do you hold off for the right time? And because Julie was moving some costs into the general fund from this other fund, and it's a different approach, which I totally support. But when you do that, it's like, well, how do I offset what I'm adding into the general fund? Well, let's find some opportunities to move out. So
it's the same discussion.
Yeah, it really is, yeah.
But then when we were moving so much out with the creation of the ambulance fund, I think that's when I shifted back and said, okay, maybe this isn't the year to do the city manager because of expenditure restraint. We may need that in our basket for next year. But,
Yeah.
and that's where I was hee-hawing around and wanting to have that discussion with council.
Yeah. Well, we're gonna make mine a lot shorter because you've already introduced the topic.
We're gonna talk, so the worry is next year we won't meet expenditure restraint and we could use his, is that the idea?
That was one of my concerns.
Okay.
But
Anything else for legal?
Maybe 2 minutes longer than I thought.
Lunch is coming at 12.
I mean,
and as she closed the door, which usually means it's here, behind us. But any other ones you wanted to squeeze in quick?
I mean, if you want to, we could talk about city manager. Maybe we just squeeze that one in
That's fine, yeah.
while we're at it.
Yep.
And it's the pages, I think, just one page or a couple pages before. We usually do
Page
council and
42.
city manager together. So, but let's start with city manager, and then we can we'll go back to council as well. So the personnel.
42.
The personnel summary isn't reflective because you didn't move me.
No,
Okay.
we did the flip-flop back and forth. I'm sorry about that. I didn't catch that.
Sorry.
So, I mean, especially with the turnover, I think we kept the budget pretty static with my budget to, once you hire a new city manager, then you'll be looking at those things. So, it very well could be you'll have less salary, but you'll do relocation expenses. You'll do, this or that. So we just put something in. It's kind of a place marker budget. If I was staying, this budget would be the way it is as you see it. So I think that's probably just the safest way to do it. You don't have to get all fancy or anything. You'll just deal with whatever changes take place when they take place. But I was surprised to know that I'm not getting moved out. So I should have looked at the dollar amounts because the dollar amounts don't show that. But again, it's that timing thing, taking advantage of these things. It's sort of like when you take a tax break, do you take it this year or next year?
Always.
It's kind of that same. That's the closest we come to doing those types of things.
Right. And I know me and Mark had conversations about, and then it goes into, you also have to justify the utility rates. So, how do you come up with an accurate percentage? When in California, he dealt with a lot of indirect cost plans and different, the city has never done a huge cost allocation study like that. So do we keep cherry picking, or do we at some point take the bullet and do a full cost allocation study? And then what percentage, and when you do that, do we allocate to the utilities? Because you got to make sure you can justify it. Because on the same hat, you're also making sure that the water and sewer and storm rates aren't too high.
For what it's worth, long term, I would do the type of study that Julie's suggesting. Just because you have it and you don't implement it 100% immediately doesn't mean you're not committed to it. Because of expenditure restraint and stuff like that, you might just ease into it or something like that. But you keep track of it so you know what you got and you know what you don't have too then. And then you've got that ability to take advantage of it when you can. But essentially that's what Chris was suggesting, I do this in my business. Exactly, and there might, I think there's benefit to knowing that you've got it, whether you choose to execute it at that moment in time or defer it, that's entirely up to you as a body.
And that, it wouldn't actually just be for his role. If we did a study, it'd actually be for all the roles. And because right now, we've got a pretty educated guess on many things, but it's still educated.
Right.
To better capture from utility staff and accounting folks, collections, all those things. Yeah, all the
good
way
example of that, when Amy's position was created in the attorney's office, if you go back to that page, only 0.65 of Amy's position is charged to the city attorney. That's because Amy, because of her role as the prosecutor, does a lot of inspection, a lot of code enforcement types of things. So we've charged 0.35. Does she exactly work 35% of her time over there? No. Sometimes it's Lynn, sometimes it's Dave, sometimes it's an outside service. So it all varies, but the idea is that you're capturing it. Does it add up to what a indirect cost plan would do? No. And the point is, if you do it, then you've got a better handle on the whole shebang, not just, we need to move a little bit of money this year. So we have a justification for everything, but the justification is inconsistent. And I think that having an indirect cost plan would say, now we do it consistently, and I think it'll help you.
Okay. City Council.
City Council.
Oh, Joe's got something.
Did you need an answer on whether or not to do Mark's position? Or
Up to you guys. Right now, we do not have it in the proposed budget for this year, but that's easily up for discussion, yeah. So if you guys want to discuss it, or...
I'd want to wait till we see the whole report, or the whole study, and kind of evaluate everything together rather than going one by one. Would be my personal preference.
Hold off. Would be good. Hold off on moving his salary anywhere would be my suggestion at the moment.
I guess there's not a huge, net impact one way or the other. We're talking like is it even a third of the salary? I mean,
max I would go would be 30%.
Sure.
Personally, just shooting from the hip.
So, little impact on those particular budgets if and when that lever is pulled. Okay. All right, council budget.
Council, I would really just go to page 40 so you know the only real increase is in professional license membership. That's dues for the League of Municipalities, along with chamber dues and other dues that we charge to the council's account. There's going to be a slight increase in the chamber, in the league dues for the upcoming year, and that's like an $800 increase that you're going to see. That's really it. I mean, the council salaries are all based on council action taken prior to people can take papers out, and there is a policy just for the new council members. There is a policy that the council adopted several years ago. The council may review salaries after the mayor gets elected. So the idea is after, in every odd number year, the council may direct staff to work with them to review the salaries and make any recommendations. But you do it then, like in April, May, so that by the time this time of year rolls around, we know whether to include it or not include it, and then the council's taken an action that is totally independent of the budget and the current council race. It's taken basically as far away from an election as you can, and that's pretty much what the council direction was probably about 10 years ago. And we've been bringing it back. There was one year the council said, "Don't even bring it back," and it was like, okay, we won't. And that's up to you guys too. If you don't want to even look at it, we won't even do it. But one or two council members look at it with staff and then make a recommendation to council.
I would move to continue not look at it.
hear that a lot. So that's, but again, that's up to you guys, but you don't have to answer until April or May.
Yep, late April or so, staff will bring it back. All right, anything else on these budgets? All right, we'll break for lunch, be back in about an hour.